for history.
Oh my God! There's no way.
Fabiano on smiling. This is immortality stuff.
MVL is on the doorstep here. Look at the confidence that he's playing with. It's all over.
12 seconds.
G7.
Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is the winner of the CrunchLabs Masters.
Black simply takes and goes rook d1 and picks up white's bishop, and he'll let his clock run out. Alexander Grischuk, he does it.
Wow, 1 second and he's blundered Duda. He's just gone from winning to losing in one move. This is just madness.
Magnus Magic. He's done it again.
When you need to win against Magnus Carlsen, not sure what to recommend.
This is just knockout.
Is he trying for a stalemate trap there?
That was so sneaky.
Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger, I'm a threat.
Checkmate in one coming in. These are the last.
Oh, and he's losing!
And Magnus cannot believe it. He's so mad at himself.
Wow, you never see this. Absolute hats off.
Welcome back to the Julius Baer Generation Cup, the final leg of the Champions Chess Tour. I'm Robert Hess. Alongside me is my good friend, Grandmaster David Howell. David, we had the weekend off. The players did not. How are you feeling about the action that's going to unfold today?
Wow, Robert, firstly, it's great to be back calling the shots with you. And yeah, some huge stakes on the line. It's going to be fantastic to watch. I was taking a peek in at the weekend. It was sad to see some players leave, but we're left with 4 fantastic competitors, and I can't wait to see who's going to make it up through to that grand final.
Well, we are in the final stages of the 4th and final leg, but as the schedule reminds us, in December 17th to 21st in Oslo, Norway, will be the Champions Chess Tour Finals. Stay alert, get your tickets as they become available. David, you and I shall be there, and we already know all 8 contestants who've worked through this schedule to make it there, but we do still have something left to be said in the Julius Baer Generation Cup. Just because these players may be through to the Oslo Finals does not mean that they're going to take a day off. They want to win this thing.
That's right. These top players, they're there for a reason. They have this winning mentality, this victor mentality where they just want to crush their opponents. They want to take every point, every prize money available. And yeah, I can't wait to see who's going to be the players that are going to be there and my hometown in Norway. And of course, plenty of games before that, Robert.
Oh, yes, indeed, because yesterday, Magnus Carlsen may have thrown Alireza Firouzja down to the loser's bracket. But before we talk about Alireza, who was very close, that final game did not go his way, but it was a roller coaster of a match with very little time remaining in some of the critical moments. But Magnus, he's up top, but look at where we are down low. Maxime, he squeaked by Alexander Grischuk yesterday. But David, Levon Aronian, he's been powerful, and he gets a rematch against Maxime.
That's right. These two did meet earlier in the competition. It was Levon Aronian who knocked Maxime Vachier-Lagrave down to that loser's bracket. And we mentioned it before, Robert. These two are great friends, great rivals. They've had so many just epic clashes over the years. And with that as an appetizer, MVL versus Aronian, before the main course, Firouzja against the winner, it's sure to be a fiery day.
Absolutely, Alireza Firouzja, he's waiting in the wings. He's going to probably follow this first match and then see who his opponent will be. But there's one question that no longer needs to be answered, David, and that's who is going to be in Oslo, because as the dominoes were falling, as certain players were scoring much-needed victories and others were being eliminated, we know that these 4 names, they entered the Julius Baer Generation Cup. Magnus Carlsen, Alireza Firouzja, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and Jan Nepomsky, he was already in based on his leaderboard. That goes to show what kind of performance Jan has had, even though he was knocked out early here.
That's right. We saw 4 huge names. We see 4 more big names. And this is the Julius Baer Generation Cup, and a real mix of generations have made it to those finals in Oslo. Wesley So, just a serial winner, it feels like. He always seems to be there. He always seems to make it to the finals, at least. And he will be joined by Vincent Keimer, a young gun there, Levon Aronian of a different generation, former world number 2, and Denis Lazovic, a name we're getting used to now, Robert, a real young phenom.
And for Dennis, he sticks with it. We know that in this year's event, he hasn't always been in the top division. In fact, he's still playing in Division 2 at the moment. Vincent Keimer in Division 3 this time around, but earlier results did go his way. And somebody who's been at the top, not just in the first division, but winning an event in this year's Champions Chess Tour is Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. We know he's in the loser's bracket now, one life left to live. But David, as we look at his accolades, he won the CrunchLabs Masters. At the Chess.com Classic, he won the second division, which allowed him up into the top division. He floated up. He won the AI Rapid Cup in 2023, where he beat Magnus Carlsen in 2 matches in a day. And he also is an over-the-board champion, 2021 World Blitz champion. Enough can't be said about Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
That's right, the Frenchman, when he's on form, can beat anyone. He's renowned for his opening preparation, his speed, his precision, his endgame accuracy is off the charts. One of the only players in the world who can match Magnus Carlsen on his day. And Maxime has had a great year. You mentioned some of the results there, Robert, and it's just fantastic to see him back in form. He'll be aiming to end the next few months on a high.
Well, Maxime, he wants to end on a high note, as you just said, but he has some stiff challenges in his way because he's facing a familiar, a friendly face, at least in real life. But Levon Aronian, he beat Maxime earlier, he'll do it again. And look at his recent accomplishment. He won the American Cup. He also was great in the Olympiad, winning an individual medal as well as Team Silver. He was in Division 2 of the CrunchLabs Masters. He's a former World Blitz and World Rapid champion, back when those fields were a bit smaller. But David, you mentioned it, a former World #2, somebody whose class, it's going to remain forever.
That's right, it has been said that when Levon Aronian is in form, the chess world is a better place for it, and we have seen him produce some sparkling games over the years, world #2 for many, many years. We thought of him as a potential future world champion, Levon Aronian, now playing for the US. Yeah, it's been a fantastic few months, and yeah, he just looks calm, he looks composed. Online chess, it took him a while to warm up to it, but these days he's producing consistent results, strong results, and creative, sparkling games. So yeah, great to see Levon here, and it looks like he's ready to get going, Robert.
Levon is a fan favorite for a reason. It's his style, both in terms of his wardrobe, but also his chess. But he always brings a fight, some new ideas. He's won the Olympiad 3 times with his native Armenia. He does play for Team USA now, and he did sort of stagnate and decline for a couple years, but it does feel like he's in some of the best form that we've seen from him in recent times. And as we talk about his opponent, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, David, these two, they are longtime friends. The whole chess world knows that, but they have to be foes. And when they played in the winners quarterfinals just a couple days ago now, we saw Levon coming out top. But if we look at that third line there, David, the average accuracy, it was nearly the same. And it was one endgame slip from Maxime in game 4 that allowed Levon to get through in the winners bracket.
That's right, that was one of the closest matches we've seen so far in the Julius Baer Generation Cup. Earlier in that match, Maxime also mouse-slipped. Well, not mouse-slipped, just simply blundered a bishop in one move, and ultimately it was just one blunder, one mistake in the closing stages of that final game that decided it. I'm expecting something equally close today. They've also met in World Cup semi-finals, where it had to go down to Armageddon back in 2017 with a score of 5-4. Levon Aronian has come up on top, Robert, in some of the most critical encounters between these two. But as you mentioned, great friends. And Maxime, we've seen it before this season, last season on the tour. He's a hard man to stop with momentum on his side.
Oh, he beat Magnus Carlsen in 2 matches in a single day. Since then, Alireza Firouzja was able to replicate that feat. But before that moment, David, it seemed like Maxime did the impossible. And here against Levon's been essaying the French defense. I don't know if that's in honor of his good friend Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, but David, will he mix it up? Will he continue going down that path? That's one of the big storylines, at least on the chessboard today.
Yeah, I don't see a French defense in his future, Robert, but he's a braver man than me. So Levon Aronian, he's sure to throw some surprises out there in the opening. He always seems to. Very well prepared, of course, very creative with his ideas. I just love this Generation Cup. It's 30s versus 40s today in terms of age. We've got a player in his early 20s waiting for one of these two a bit later on, and we're going to get the games going any moment now. What are your predictions, Robert, as we get ready for game 1?
Oh, it's really difficult to predict anything with Levon at least. With Maxime, he has the standard repertoire, but he has been diversifying in recent years. He was always a Najdorf, a Grunfeld guy. He loved playing in the Berlin. But David, he has changed his repertoire. It was a much needed shift from Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
Yeah, I think a good tip for everyone at home. Sometimes trying fresh new ideas does give your game a real boost. And it's a French defense again, Robert. It's deja vu almost, as the players did have a couple of French encounters a few days ago in their earlier match. And this time, a pause from Levon Aronian before trading off in the center. This is the classical variation of the French defense, where white does have more space. Black is slightly cramped. Watch out for the black light squared bishop being a bad piece long term. But yeah, well-trodden paths so far. And we see the inevitable march of the H-pawn, Robert. White will aim to attack the black king, and the white king likely to go to the other flank.
Well, look at this showdown in the center for the moment. The d4 square, it's covered by white's pieces. And as you're indicating, once white castles long, that d4 knight, it gets some reinforcement. And I think, David, the key to many of these positions is that they're actually not that sharp. That if everything gets traded, let's say the knights, the dark square bishops, the queens, then white is just suggesting that he has the long-term advantage because the bishop on c8 will be a bad piece. So this is a big moment for Levon deciding what avenue to take this game. He's shown a tendency to play for f7, f6, and David, now that he's protected that pawn on e6, we might see that in the near future.
Yeah, that would make sense, Robert. We like to talk about pawn breaks. It's a key kind of component of general middle game strategy, and pawn breaks here would potentially favor black. At least black is the more developed of the two. Black has already castled the white king sitting in the center. Watch out. The queen doesn't look like she's doing too much, the black queen here, but she is staring down at the white king in case the center explodes. So yeah, asking a big question of Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Maxime does castle. He's ignoring the fact that there might be some sacrifices on this square. A lot of viewers at home might be wondering why black didn't take a pawn on a3, but I don't think there are any attacking chances yet, Robert. We do see a trade, and it's bishop for knight, but finally, a pawn storm in the near future for Levon Aronian. He's coming for the white king.
I have to say this was a really bright capture from Levon to take with the bishop. We're often taught trade the same pieces, take with your knight. But what he's done is allowed himself to be flexible on the queen side. What do rooks need? Open files. That rook on h3, it's trying to lift, maybe go to g3 at the right moment, but also be defensive along the third rank, anticipating that black wants to strike with b5 to b4. And in the event of that pawn push, that rook is well positioned, David, to help defend the white king.
Ooh, that's right. Yeah, multi-purpose move. And another tip for everyone at home, you know, go to the gym, lift those rooks. It could come in useful for later on. I am expecting the rook to land on g3 at some point, but as you say, Robert, it could well, especially now the white knight has moved out the way. For example, if the black queen dodges, threatens a checkmate in one, coming down to the a1 square, it will be met by a brutal rook slide, and that black queen would be left embarrassed. So multi-purpose, and something else you alluded to, a queen exchange potentially favoring white long term. Do you think we'll see those damsels remain on the board?
I just love the way that Levon is either trading off on his own terms or keeping the tension until the trade benefits him most. a5 is such a smart play. If queens are traded, then the a file opens up, that rook on a8 developed on its starting square, and also by playing a5, that bad bishop that we keep talking about, is it really that bad when it comes to a6?
Ooh, very good question. It might not be bad for much longer if it can trade itself off and trade itself for a potentially stronger piece. Yeah, multi-purpose move. These top players, they're so classy. And like you said, Robert, just really high quality so far today. And, well, we're getting used to it from them, of course. I'm not sure who I prefer, to be honest. Black's moves are just easy, right? Black's bishop is coming out. Black's other rook might slide to b8. Less clear what white is doing. Maxime slides his rook across. Big threat. Hitting the knight.
Yeah. Hanging knight that you wouldn't even expect to be loose in these types of positions, but he wants the queens on the board for now because of what you were just highlighting, David, that some of these endgames will actually be preferable, for black. And that's what they say about the French defense. You get some passive pieces, but the long-term structure is good for black because look at the pawn chain from f7 to d5. It's sturdy, it's hard to chisel at, whereas white's pawn on e5, that's maybe overextended in some positions for an f6 pawn break. So I do think that Maxime's last move, it shows his intentions. We're not just going to go to an endgame where maybe you're feeling all fine. Now there's some tactics at play.
Yeah, tactics in the air. The bishop simply defends its knight. Not the ideal square. I think that can be considered a small psychological gain for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. The fact that he stopped the black bishop from coming out to a6, it's a kind of ideal post, putting pressure along this diagonal. He slowed black down, but I don't see the white attack, Robert. Maxime wanted to get some energy going. I guess h4 was partly to lift the white rook across the third rank, but I don't really see him making too much headway on the king side right now. And the attention, if it does switch to the white king, I'm very much starting to like the trend for Levon Aronian. And Maxime steps back. I guess he wants to occupy the center with his knight instead. Is this just the calm before the storm? Cagey moves from white.
Yeah, bishop e3 is one of those mysterious moves, but knight d4 can happen next. The bishop on f1 is undeveloped. Also now rook b3 is a little bit more pleasant because you have to get to keep your dark square bishop, and only white has a bishop on that color complex. That could be useful when so many pieces are remaining on the board. But David, I think it's more difficult to make individual moves from the white side. We do see knight to d4, and if the trades now happen and a black bishop comes to a6, is black in any danger in any of these endgames?
That's a very good question. I'm assuming knight takes knight right now will be met by a capture by the white queen. White wants to get the queens off. The white rook suddenly might be able to land on the 7th rank in any endgames. We're looking deep into the future here, but that's what the players are doing as well. And ooh, piece sacrifice, but don't get tempted here, Robert. That was a checkmate threat in 1. Queen takes b2 was the idea, so that was blocked wisely by the white rook. And now black only has one move. The blue arrow appears. Black has to trade queens just in case he loses material on the next turn. So endgame inevitable, Robert. And who do you think's the happier of the two players?
I think that Levon should be perfectly pleased with the position that's arising here. But I have to say, I mean, from Maxime, the way that he is causing some problems that black will need to resolve. There's a lonely A pawn, an isolated pawn. There's a dark square bishop for white that can come in useful later on. And right now there's this difficult challenge posed to Levon, who is down by a bit over a minute on the clock. So I ultimately think Levon has played extremely well, only trading on his terms, but I still get the sense that Maxime has some aspirations for a full point.
Yeah, never play the French against a Frenchman. That's my motto, and I just have a bad feeling. You mentioned a few small things there, but these small things do add up, and the white king also being closer to the center, the more pieces that get traded, the more strong that piece might become. It might, later the white king might be able to march up, assuming all the rooks disappear, towards that isolated black A-pawn, and I just don't see any kind of logical moves here for black other than just trading and praying and hoping for the best. The black knight on d7 especially bad, as you mentioned there. The white dark square bishop kind of dominates along this diagonal, indirectly covering the black knight from hopping around. And Levon thinking this is a pretty long think by his standards. Yeah, not easy. Black is definitely the one answering the questions.
Yeah, the knights are staring at each other. Does black just want to take on d4, or will that liquidation help white? As you're very importantly highlighting, the knight on d7 is kind of a weak piece at this moment. So if we do see knight takes d4 and white throws in rook takes b8 check, I wonder if black will take back with the knight to then step forward to c6. I actually think that's an important type of maneuver. We don't often retreat with our knight. We usually take back with a rook. But in this type of position, maybe that black knight really needs to improve its location, and c6 does feel like a better square.
Yeah, that's a very deep point, Robert, but a very good one. I think that's exactly what Levon should be aiming for. And while he's having a long think, maybe I'll just quickly put that on the board. A good tip for everyone at home. Knight takes knight here for black. If white does try to avoid double pawns, for example, if he takes back, he might well be left with two isolated weak B pawns here. If he tries to avoid this and flick in the intermezzo, rook takes rook, then definitely the black knight will be capturing. Retreating, like in life, sometimes you have to go back in order to go forwards, and at the very end, the black knight would activate challenge for the key d4 outpost, and suddenly the knight is not inferior at all to the white bishop. Let's go back, because there have been a couple of moves. Yeah, the two top players, they're so good at sensing these details, Robert. Wisely, Maxime not allowing the black knight to improve himself, not trading off the rooks. So we might see that change in pawn structure, but the bishop now, definitely superior to the black knight.
And these top players, they make these decisions look easy, because most people would say, ooh, these double isolated b-pawns, why would I harm my pawn structure like this? And it's all about the activity. That bishop on d4 completely dominates the knight on d7, so it may take black a little bit more time to activate that piece. And while you're trying to reroute the knight, the white rook can go to a1, or if they're double b pawns, the c file opens up. So don't be surprised if a rook lands on c1. And as you mentioned, David, that white king, it's very active. It's ready for this queenside activity.
Yeah, if all the rooks disappear, white might just be winning the pawn race purely because the king is more active. And yeah, you rarely want to lead with your king from the front in any middle games, any openings. But the more pieces disappear, the stronger that piece becomes. And right now, if we do a comparison, Robert, bishop probably superior to the black knight, the white rook more flexible than the black rook, and the king superior as well. That's why Levon Aronian is trying to change the nature of the game. If he was too slow, the white rook would simply have come in. So he's trying for that f6. You mentioned it's kind of his trademark in these French defense positions. He's at least kind of hinting that the black king might start getting active. I love this last move by black.
Really strong move, and it shows that his intentions aren't just to sit peacefully. He could play ambitiously and maybe for a win. We see now white has this isolated pawn on e5. It is well defended by a bishop on d4. But later in the game, if the black king snakes out, king f7, king g6, king f5, things like that, that pawn can become an easy target. So I like this decision from Levon. But David, something we haven't really talked about, look at Maxime's clock. He is doing exceptionally well on time.
Robert, I've literally been playing Maxime for 25 years. We first played as 8-year-olds, and I remember the first time we played, I was down to about 1 minute. He had over an hour on his clock, and that trend has never changed. He's always been super speedy, super confident, and yeah, it's really given him one-sided victories over the years. I just remember so many games, Robert, where he's put his opponent under pressure on the board, the clock, and they collapse. Levon Aronian is a hard man to kind of disturb, but if this trend continues and Maxime keeps playing this speedily, then yeah, Levon will feel the heat at some point.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to distract for a second. Normally I'm so focused on the chess, but I saw that featured chat saying you've replaced Morgan Freeman as the voice of Earth. First of all, you're an Englishman. You'd be replacing David Attenborough, right? Like, how is Morgan Freeman getting involved here? You have somebody with the same name who is the voice of all things nature, at least in the UK.
Stop it, Robert. You're making me blush. I mean, that is a very esteemed company. Sir David Attenborough. It is my dream, actually, in life to get a knighthood. So maybe someday. Ooh. But Morgan Freeman as well. What a legend. As getting back to the chess, Levon hits the white rook. Maybe he's coming forward with the black knight, Robert.
Well, you mentioned knighthood, and he says that sounds like a good piece to improve here. And I'm wondering if rook c6, is there rook d3 check? It's a very important question. What kind of trades benefit each side? And that gets tactical, but actually that would, as you indicated earlier, help white, who is the outermost passed pawn. So white instead, after knight b4, might play, well, actually, rook c3 drops b2. So after knight b4, what's the best follow-up from the white side?
Yeah, very, very good question. I guess Maxime's trying to figure that out now. I'm just going to put a couple of moves on the board for you, for everyone at home as well. You mentioned, Robert, rook d3 check, a possible idea in this position. Trading off pieces. Here, you're hitting the king, hitting the bishop. If the rook is captured, whoops, knight fork. And to my eyes, this just looked beautiful for white. The b-pawn starts running. But suddenly we realize that the black king is in the square. And if we draw the square, it is this one. And the black king can step across into it and cover the white pawn. I have no idea the result that would end up here. If Eval Bar says level, it could be anyone's game. Black has a protected pass pawn, keeping the white king honest in front of it. And this might be the type of thing that Maxime is calculating. No, he's suddenly given a check. He wanted to avoid that, Robert, and instead playing h5, closing the cage around the black king, stopping it coming forward. And maybe to answer your question, knight b4, we might see a bunch of checks from the white rook.
That seems like a good idea, and if white gets ambitious, bishop back to c3, now that the rook isn't under fire, that could be an attempt to play for a win from the white side. And I think Maxime is playing for a win. Not so much on the board, he knows that Levon is holding on well, but if you look at the clock, right, that is coming up on a 3-minute difference, and there may be a big question for Levon, like, should I push a kingside pawn? Pawn h6 makes a lot of sense at certain moments. Should I try to play for going after the white pawns? He does just that with rook g3, but that knight on a6, knights in the rim, they are dim, and that knight does not look that good at the moment.
Ooh, you're right. It's running out of squares. At the moment, it only has one escape square on b4, and I'm wondering if you can try and cut it off somehow. Not sure exactly how you close the cage. You would love to use your king to cover the b4 square and start pushing your pawns. Okay, immediately chasing that piece away. And, watch out, knight b4. There's checkmating ideas, Robert. If the white bishop ever lands on c5, rook on f8, the black king is trapped. Be careful, Levon Aronian.
Wow, that is devious. That little pawn h5 push, I thought he was just trying to gain space. I didn't realize he was setting up a checkmating net. So Levon grabs a pawn with check. The white king, it can step back to the first rank, so it can't get checked anymore. But these sort of endgames, it's like a game of Minesweeper. You have to pick the correct square, I should say. Otherwise, things could blow up in your face. So right now, what square is best for white? He steps up to e3, but I saw the slight advantage, David. It went back towards the middle, so perhaps that wasn't 100% accurate right there.
Yeah, maybe not necessarily the best move, but he's still testing Levon Aronian. I think the black knight had to jump to b4 there. If it had gone back to the 7th rank, then it would have been pinned. And now bishop c5 looks scary. I think this is Maxime's plan. Dual threat.
Well, I can't hear David at the moment, but I see his arrows going on, so he will be brought back in a second. And we, as David was about to say here, this knight on b4, it is saving itself, but also can step forward to c2 with check, and that's really essential in these positions. And I'm just going to draw some arrows for you all, that this knight, it can wrap around. Bishop c5, this is a double attack, threatening checkmate with rook to f8. But when the knight comes to c2 with check, it looks like the white king is in time to go after the rook. But then this knight, it slides to e1, and it gives a check to the white king and protects the rook all at once. And that's what's keeping black alive. So these are some big moments here. It is a checkmating net against the black king, but perhaps Levon has just enough counterplay with this last move, knight to b4. So, what a moment this is. And I think that, well, David, I think I hear you back, so welcome back, partner. I knew what you were saying, so I just had to take the reins from you for a second.
I'm not sure what happened there, everyone. Thanks for covering it for me, but I'm back, and at the critical moment, as you were pointing out, by a miracle, Levon Aronian might be saving this game. Those knight checks, easy to miss, especially when knights land on the opponent's back rank, that knight e1 especially. I think Maxime might have underestimated this. Levon, I'm going to say it's a miracle, but he made his own luck here. He's found all the best moves to hold on.
And it's just unfortunate for Maxime that his king was not able to sprint towards the queen side. But here it goes forward, and Levon says, what was that checkmating net you were just speaking about? He pushes to g6, and David, white could have threatened a checkmate by pushing the pawn to h6, but that's a good way to play for a loss, because black isn't going to allow his king to receive that mate. He would have pushed his g-pawn some more, and now that we're looking at this, black's up a pawn. So is it Maxime or is it Levon who needs to be more careful at the moment?
Ooh, this is tough. Normally I would take the material, but white's pieces are so active. This bishop, again, it's the question of whether it dominates this knight. The black knight doesn't look too promising right now. It's not a great circuit, so I would take white. I've also heard over the course of the years that rook and bishop tend to coordinate better than rook and knight. It's also the white king, much more active than its counterpart. So, okay, we'll see. It's been pushed back, though, that white king, and this checking motif you mentioned, Robert. The question is it strong enough to keep white at bay here? Does black continue checking with the knight, drive the white king away, maybe then start pushing the pawn? Could we see a race, B versus G, in the near future?
Knights are so bad when dealing with passed pawns that are far away. Slow moving pieces. And the knight on e1, you don't get a promotion for getting to the opponent's first rank. So unfortunately for Levon, pawn race sounds scary, but he just gives these checks, and can the white king escape? Is it going to run on over to b3 now?
Ooh, moment of truth, Robert. If Maxime goes back, if he goes right, there we go, he slides to e3. This is the second time we've seen this position. We could well see a draw right now, a repetition of moves. I would love to see it, Maxime continue the fight, running the king away, but it would be running in the wrong direction of the black g-pawn. So understandable if neither side wants to take a risk in the first game of the match, and there we go. It is a draw by repetition, and I'm not sure the happier of the two players there. I think Levon might have been the one who got away with things a bit, but ultimately a peace treaty, and we go again in game 2.
Yeah, neither player... Oh, there's Maxime. I was waiting for a reaction. He's like, maybe there was a little something here. But I feel like they're just studious. They are analyzing the game, and that's how dedicated these professionals are. They are not taking a moment off. They care about this match. And it was a drawn game. There was a lot of fight in there, but also a little separated them, David. I never really saw a huge advantage for white, and because Levon played such great defense.
That's right. Sometimes chess, when it's played well, when it's played accurately between two extremely strong players, a draw is by far the most likely result. And there we go. We did see a draw in the first game. It's just a best of two shootout today. So the next game is all important. Levon Aronian will get the white pieces and will hope to press some advantage there. But in this game, Robert, it was close, as you mentioned. It was extremely high accuracy from both sides, with just small threats here and there, some kind of landmines that both players dodged in the end. And I just want to take everyone through an actual replay of those critical moments in the endgame, especially those knight jumps that Levon Aronian had to find to stay in the game. And it all began here. We were asking how white is going to cage the black king, contain its potential activity. If the black king ever comes in, it would definitely be Levon Aronian kind of making use of the French defense here, making use of that solid pawn structure and pushing an advantage in the endgame. Instead, h5, real genius from Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, closing the cage around that black king, and we'll see why that's important a bit later. Rook to g3, very logical move, threatening a pawn on g2, and a few turns later, rook to a8, couple of checks, rook takes pawn. Maybe the white king could have gone in a different direction. Ultimately, though, knight to b4 was the only move to save the black knight. It was hit on the a6 square, and after bishop c5, fortunately for black, everything worked out here. We were pointing out bishop takes knight, a threat, rook to f8, checkmate, a nasty hidden threat as well, but knight to c2 held the draw. If the king had slid to the left, then another knight check, and this would have continued. Rook c2 check would have been a dagger here if the white king had been braver, but instead we saw that draw, the repetition, ultimately with the knight continuing to check the white king, and it was here that the players ultimately settled for peace. Equality, 98% accuracy for both sides, and just a very well played game of chess.
It was a fantastic game of chess. Thank you, David, for walking us through that, because for Maxime, he looked a little disappointed when he finally reacted, and it's probably because he spoiled a chance with the white pieces, but it's just because of the amazing defense from Levon. That knight was quite hoppy.
Yeah, jumping around the whole board. That knight went on a real journey. We were talking about what a bad piece it was, but ultimately both players should receive knighthoods for the way they handled that endgame. And Maxime looks in good spirits. Levon looks much more serious, Robert, as they prepare for the all-important, potentially critical second game.
Yes, and for Maxime, getting that refreshment in during the game for Levon, scratch of the head, but it was just trying to figure out where to place the pieces. And I have to say, for a game one in a best of two, that was one of those games where while you're playing it, I feel like I missed something here. I felt like I had an advantage if you're Maxime. But if you're Levon, you should be feeling great about your chances. You get white in game two, that first move advantage should come in handy, and a great defense and making it look easy for Levon.
Exactly. They say it in sports as well. Often if you play away at your opponent's territory, it's like in chess playing with the black pieces, just getting out of that game alive. That's the key. And then you play on your home turf, and then you press the advantage. So playing with white next, Levon has a great track record actually against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave with white. I was looking up the stats beforehand, and many, many wins over the course of the years. He often switches it up, plays anti-Grunfeld against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, not allowing him to use his well-renowned opening preparation. And I have a feeling Levon's the happier of the two. But ultimately, they did that game review, as you mentioned, Robert. We saw on their face, both of them, clear consciences. They played well in that first game, and that just sets the tone.
There should be nothing to regret. When both accuracies are 98.5% approximately, you just know that you're playing a fantastic opponent who is on their A game. And for Maxime, who gets the black pieces in the second game of action in this best of two match, he needs to play well, because Levon, he is willing to make things sharp ASAP. You mentioned the Grunfeld, pushing your pawn to g6. That always allows that alpha zero. I want to call it an Aronian zero. He's been doing that well before alpha zero came about, his h4 pawn pushes. So for Levon, he is a seasoned veteran. He's also in some great playing shape, as we saw at the Olympiad and here in the Julius Baer Generation Cup. So David, I think that for Maxime, he needs to be wary, because Levon has proven throughout these last few months he's ready to go. On a Sicilian.
Yeah, he's ready to go, and it's not an open Sicilian. It's a anti-Sicilian here, not going for the most fiery main lines, not allowing any trades in the center. Bishop to d3, that's not a mouse slip for everyone at home, and that is simply designed to protect the central pawn. Later, the white bishop will slide back, so white can try to build a big pawn center. Let's ignore the question mark as well, attached to Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's last move. This is a well-known type of idea. Black often puts the bishop on what looks like an awkward square on c6. As soon as I say that, commentator's curse, Robert, the knight lands on that square. Maxime doing some slightly odd stuff, I've got to say, with the bishop now, looking rather blocked. But okay, creative stuff, and the players freestyling from an early stage. That promises a real battle ahead.
And a number of Armenian players, they use this opening, not just to say, oh, I'll be peaceful, it's even. They want a long-term advantage, but this is how Maxime typically plays against this structure. You want to play d4, well, look at my central control. The e5 and the c5 pawns just make you think twice about it, pushing the pawn to d4. You have enough defenders there, but are you trading a little bit too much? Is black unhappy? Can this turn into a Spanish type of structure, David, if white does play d4?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Robert. The Spanish, the Royal pairs, often ends up often by transposition in similar types of positions with black putting pawns on these squares and just readying himself. And wow, I didn't expect that one. I thought we would see at least one set of exchanges. The black bishop, after a set of exchanges, could have come to pin the white knight as well. Instead, Maxime just invites white to gain space, and suddenly Sicilian morphing into a Roy Lopez, morphing potentially into a King's Indian defense type of pawn structure, with white obtaining all of the space. But a locked pawn structure, it's very much about taste here, Robert. What do you think Levon's going to do? Is he going to keep the tension, try to build? Is he going to trade off, simplify? Or is he going to go for the ultimate complex locked structure there? And I should have let you answer first.
I wasn't going to choose the lock structure, so I'll be honest with you. I was thinking that Levon would keep the tension a little bit longer, but as we see now, white has all the space that you could ask for. Playing a4, the e4 pawn, well defended. One of black's typical ideas is to play f5, a la the King's Indian defense, but there's a bishop on c2, and whoa, we have g5, so is Maxime going all out for a win in this second game, or does he truly believe in this strategy as the best way to parry off whatever offensive ideas that Levon may have?
Oh, I think he's just steering into the skid here, Robert. He knows it's gone a bit wrong with black, and he's just gone all in. I mean, one thing is giving up all the space, but he's not developed his bishop. He's not got his king castled. Suddenly, big threats. This pawn is defended for now, but watch out. Another knight is going to hop forward. Both the white knights are going to be hitting this pawn, and your position's, it's like cheese. It's full of holes right now. There's also the f5 square a white knight can step back and jump into. It looks like a King's Indian gone wrong, and he's already setting his pieces up back for the next game, Robert. Rook to a8. What is this?
I'm actually going to give that move one exclamation point. I think that was a very smart decision by Maxime, and the reason why is your idea. Knight to b5 was such a threat, but the a7 pawn was also left undefended over there. So he's preemptively defending the a7 pawn. If knight b5, he can play queen b8. He doesn't actually need to trade pieces, because what white ideally wants is after knight b5, bishop takes, and take back with the a pawn, opening up the rook on a1. So I really like this move, rook a8. I don't like the position. Let me be clear about that, David. But these little moves like rook to a8, they're how you save games at this high level.
Yeah, you swallow your pride. You just say, okay, I might have made a mistake putting my rook on the c8 square a few moves ago. And yeah, ultimately tempo play doesn't really count for as much, right, in these block positions, because we won't see any open lines, we won't see any direct tactics, and that's why we see Levon Aronian slide his king into the corner. He's saying, okay, I'm just going to wait, see how you set up, and then decide upon a plan. White could well just explode the queenside a bit later with pawn to b4. I'm slightly expecting that one in the near future. But no, first he reroutes his knight back, and it is that juicy f5 square. You mentioned, Robert, trading black's beautiful light square bishop for one of the white knights. Not really ideal, and okay, might be forced to do so in the near future. a6 in the meantime, given a question mark. I've got to say I'm very biased towards the space advantage here. Can Maxime hold it together, though, do you think?
That was a huge mistake, and the reason why is perhaps Maxime was relying on pawn to b5 here. But after all the trades, and here it's happening, so we don't even need an analysis board, knight b6 takes d7. And that f5 square that you were just mentioning, David, thank you very much. That's mine for the taking, says Levon. And that is an outpost that black is going to regret. You know, if you could push your pawn back to g6, if you could deal with a knight coming to f5, you'd feel like you're much more in this game. But it's not just about the f5 square, it's all of the light squares. Imagine that bishop on c2, rerouting via d1 over to g4, h5. There's just so much long-term that black has to worry about that I'm not feeling this position, not at all.
G3, really classy move there from Levon Aronian. The black knight now on g6 looks misplaced. It looks dominated, can never hop forward into the white camp, and just looks like one-way traffic. Yes, black for now has control over the queen side, but it's going to switch now Levon Aronian's focus towards the other flank. Knight and f5, the white queen might jump out to h5. Watch out as well. G3 might well just prepare a opening of the position when black is caught off balance. Yeah, for now, I'm going to say it's not winning yet, but strategically, Maxime is already on the brink. He cannot afford a further positional mistake. If the white light square bishop gets in, as you said, Robert, it's going to be curtains for black.
And black can't castle either, right? Castling walks right into knight f5, queen h5, and your king is being hunted. And if you can't castle, watch out for white playing a bishop move, let's say bishop d2, and queen a1. It's not just about checkmate, right? This open a file, the only open file, if white can seize control of it, and the queens come off the board, how is black going to defend the a7 square, the a6 attack on d6, and also the b5 pawn will be quickly attacked by the light square bishop. Only white has one of those. So, David, I love the way Levon is handling this. And from the opening, as soon as bishop d7 was played, then knight c6, you kind of called it. Like, what exactly was Maxime aiming for? I think he actually has been aimless. He hasn't had a concrete plan, and now he is paying the price.
Yeah, you're right, Robert. It's just kind of fallen off very quickly. And we talked about Maxime's clock handling in the previous game. When he's feeling confident, it's all about the speed. Suddenly he's starting to slow down, but maybe he did play a bit too quickly in the early stages. He made some huge decisions, allowing white to push the pawn to d5, allowing his light squared bishop to be traded off. He made them super quickly, just purely on instinct, but it looks like the damage might have been done already. He jumps in. He's hoping to attack a pawn here. He's hoping to potentially get the queens off. But as you pointed out, Robert, that's not the end of the world for white. You could even just move your bishop to defend this pawn, allow the queen trade, and white will soon occupy the only open line. So yeah, it's a choice between evils here. But Maxime, I think he went wrong. That bishop d7 move in the opening, that's well known if white had played the move h3. I don't want to get too deep into the woods with opening theory, but I think he got mixed up with his opening variations. And he ultimately just wasn't able to complete development, never able to castle as black, and he's paying the price now.
Even here, you can trade queens and you still can't castle because knight f5 is a fork, hitting the d6 and the h6 pawn. So you just lose material on the spot. So it was an opening disaster, even though it looked quite closed. And now we're at a position where Levon is just winning. Like I think the evaluation bar doesn't even fully explain how simple this game is going to be for white, because black has no ideas. White is going to play rook a1 next, and then have his choice of where to infiltrate from, and the white knight coming into f5, the bishop coming to d3. How in the world would any human save this game? I just don't see it being possible. If Maxime does it, David, I'm just going to be incredibly impressed.
Yeah, we've seen some crazy turnarounds on the Champions Chess Tour this season. I'm thinking Alireza Firouzja. I mean, the eval bar swings in all of his games. Those can be crazy, but this isn't that type of position. That's the problem for Maxime. This is very simplified, very strategic. It's hard to imagine any big blunders from Levon Aronian. Here we go. He's just won a pawn on the queen side. Maxime had to kind of give up a pawn just to gain some time, gain at least a square for the black knight. But now he's a pawn down. This is attacked. The white bishop's coming to e3 to kick away black's only good piece. This might be over in a few moves.
And there's no time advantage to speak of. One of the things that's been keeping Maxime, ahead, at least in the first game, was his clock management. And now we see that Levon is taking your advice. Bishop takes c5. That springs free the d pawn. It also means the e5 pawn is hanging. There are already tactics with knight takes d6 check or knight takes e5 anyway. So, David, there's just no way. I mean, I'm just trying to be realistic here. I typically don't call games this early, but this is over.
Yeah, we see it on Maxime's camera. I know the featured chat has been talking about it for a while as well. Just these small, imperceptible kind of closing of the eyes, shaking of the head. Suddenly it's becoming more pronounced. And look at Maxime exhaling here. He's, I think, fighting the urge to resign already. There we go. Levon keeps it simple. He just takes another pawn and Maxime resigns. Wow, Robert, that was one-sided traffic the whole game. Levon, dominant fashion there.
And you see Maxime, who is such a kind person and is good friends with Levon. He didn't want to be that friendly, but Levon Aronian, starting with the black pieces in game 1, playing some active chess, holding on, and then in game 2, that was as one-sided as you see at this level, David. There was never a chance there for Maxime.
Yeah, never a chance. The opening went all wrong. He played a bit too quickly in the early stages of the middle game, made further positional mistakes, and Levon, just cool, calm, collected there, seized on his chances. He didn't do anything special. He didn't need to. He kept things simple. A good tip for everyone at home. When you have the advantage, don't allow the position to get messy. And Levon Aronian takes this loser's semi-final. He moves on. He will be facing Alireza Firouzja in the next round. Robert, he did it in style, and he's got more chess ahead. That's his reward.
He does have more chess ahead, and that game ended so quickly. It's almost one of those where you don't think there are instructive moments, but there definitely were there, I think, from Maxime's perspective. Allowing your opponent to gain all the space and then opening up some files that led to disaster. So, as you said, Levon, he moves on. He knows that he's got more chess today because in just a bit, he will face off against Alireza Firouzja. And I have to say that this is a great matchup that I haven't seen all that much. We don't actually see Levon and Alireza playing that frequently, so that promises to be exciting.
That's right, Julius Baer Generation Cup producing a real battle of the generations in the losers final shortly to come. But I just want to recap Levon Aronian's key moments in that previous game. He made it look easy, he made it look simple, defeating one of the best players in the world with the white pieces, but ultimately a lot of the damage was self-inflicted, and it began in the opening. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave already making a questionable decision, moving this bishop to a slightly passive square. For everyone at home, try not to commit pieces unless you know that you can place them on their ideal squares, ideal homes. Here already, white has just built a pawn center. It was time to erode that center. Black had to trade off pawns here and jump out potentially with his bishop again. This would have been a pin, at least now if white gains space, as per the game. Black's knight could have jumped into the center, making use of the fact that the white knight on f3 is pinned and feeling slightly awkward. Any checks could be blocked very simply here by black pushing a pawn to b5. Levon here would have been hard-pressed to find any advantage whatsoever. Instead, Maxime very quickly played the move rook to c8, allowing white to choose whether to seize space in the center. We talk about space in chess. It's often because you have more room to maneuver. You have more control over squares. You can switch attention to kingside, queenside at will, and already the black pieces were forced to step backwards to ugly squares. White gaining space on the queen side this time, knights jumping forward, and just a few moves later, it was obvious white's advantage. The knight came round, the knight attacked a pawn on d6, a backward pawn, and the final mistake in this middle game was here. Pawn to b5, rushing with black, opening things up while black wasn't ready. The black king still in the center. After a trade of pawns, a trade of rooks, the white knight jumped forward and eliminated black's best piece. The light squared bishop disappearing allowed white access to the f5 square. Later, white's pieces came forward to win the black queenside pawns, and it was simple from this point onwards. Simply an opening disaster, leading to Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's exit from this tournament.
Oof, that was a very one-sided game. Credit to Levon Aronian for pouncing on the mistake, and for Maxime, there was nothing that could save him, except maybe if he could conjure up some magic. So he did not have any available to him, but you know what is a magical chess game? Ani Chess. It's a free-to-play magical chess game bringing you a totally new way to play the game. Now Ani Chess invite-only alpha, a player versus player experience, is coming soon. Visit go.chess.com/AniChess or use the command AniChess in chat and use the code CCT to accept the challenge. What we just saw was demolition, no magic to save Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and as you see him here, during that game, things were not going his way. He bit off more than he could chew against Levon Aronian. He could not believe it, considering that he came in trying to be on equal terms with his longtime friend, but it was a foe today. Levon Aronian, not the friendly face that we're used to. He moves on. He faces Alireza Firouzja after this break. This is the Champion Chess Tour, the Julius Baer Generation Cup. You don't want to miss any of this action coming up next.
Let's explore game review. After establishing a positional clamp in the opening with the bishop pair and a strong d5 pawn, Grandmaster Jan-Krzysztof Duda appeared to be en route to a typical Super Grandmaster versus Grandmaster victory as he grew his edge to a winning one over the next 20 moves. Still, in every game there comes a critical moment where a good position must be accurately converted. Duda found the right idea with 35h3 to force Grandmaster Dragnev's queen away from the defense of the bishop, since queen f5 is met by g4. Dragnev played the resourceful but desperate rook takes f1 check, and then Duda erred. Capture with the king was necessary and the checks will run out, but after the overly clever king h2, the bar shot back to equal. Dragnev has 3 pieces hanging, but the brilliant queen takes h3 check saves the game for him. After Duda captured the queen, his rook fell with check. He can move his king up, forking the rook and knight, but then the knight is sacrificed to force checkmate on h3. There was no good way to evade the perpetual check, so Dragnev secured a draw both for himself and for Austria against Poland in their critical match. Stunning shots like queen takes h3 check are rare, but chess games are filled with resources. Run game review on your own games to find amazing ideas lurking underneath the surface.
Chess with friends is fun, and Discord is your place to talk with friends. This month only, Discord is joining forces with Chess.com. Win a game against Wumpus, Nelly, or Clyde, and you'll win a free month of Discord Nitro. And watch out for a super secret opponent later in the month. Play them all only on Chess.com.
Welcome back to AniChess. AniChess is modernizing chess by infusing the timeless game with an innovative spell mechanic. Here, we see the players starting with a Roy Lopez.
Bound over bounds, where freedom resides.
There, we saw Bishop 2.0, leaping the bishop over one piece in its path.
A sidestep dance, enhance your advance.
That pawn just used shift, moving it one square horizontally.
Welcome aboard, fresh pawn.
And there we see an extra pawn in play from the spell House Recruit.
A diagonal dash, quick as a flash.
An interesting play to slip the knight onto f4. AniChess invite-only alpha is coming soon. Register with code CCT to secure your spot and get invited when the experience launches. Push your classic chess skills to their limits.
welcome back to the Julius Baer Generation Cup, the fourth and final leg of the Champions Chess Tour 2024. I'm Robert Hess. Alongside me is Grandmaster David Howell. And David, we didn't expect that match to end that quickly, but that's what happens when you poke Levon Aronian. He will make you pay.
That's right, Levon Aronian at full force, destroying Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. We've got to say, it was brutal. It was one-sided, that last game, and totally unexpected. We didn't expect it. I think Alireza Firouzja, Levon's next opponent, didn't expect it. I can't wait to see whether Levon is able to continue that fiery form in the next clash. But yeah, Robert, that was short, that was sweet, and Levon must be buzzing full of confidence right now.
And as we know, our next matchup, Levon against Alireza. David, I have to ask you, do you think that Levon is favored in the sense that he just got to play, he's warmed up, or Alireza, he got a little bit of rest, maybe he's a bit fresher?
Yeah, there's two schools of thought here, Robert. A lot of players I know, especially the older players, like a bit more rest. This is a clash of generations after all. I think if it were shoes on the other foot, Firouzja getting that warm-up, I think he would have been supremely confident right now. But yeah, I think Levon, especially the way that last match ended, he's going to be riding high and he'll want to go again.
Yeah, I can't blame him because we know what Levon is capable of. At his best, he is maybe the hardest man to take down outside of Magnus Carlsen, at least when back in his peak. Fabiano Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura, they may have something to say about that. But in the 2024 American Cup, Fabiano couldn't get past Levon. It was Levon who won that event. In the CrunchLabs Masters, he was in second place in the second division. Now he's been up to the top division. He won the World Blitz way back when in 2010. 2009 World Rapid Champion. David, it doesn't matter. He wins in all disciplines and formats.
That's right, Levon Aronian, he really specializes in one-on-one battles as well, these matches, these knockouts. He's twice won the World Cup as well. We shouldn't forget that. The World Cup is pretty much the Colosseum of knockout chess, where the players have to bring their best across classical, rapid, and blitz. And Levon, he's been there, he's won it twice. And he really showed his experience in that last clash, Robert. He'll aim to show his experience again as he plays an opponent pretty much half his age in the next round.
Well, he's won so many things. Why not add the Julius Baer Generation Cup to that list of accomplishments? And you don't need me and David to continue talking about Levon. We have a video to highlight who the man is and some of his successes. Take it away.
Levon Aronian has been one of the world's strongest players for almost 2 decades. The 41-year-old has won numerous major tournaments, achieved the 4th highest rating in history, and consistently been ranked among the world's top 5 players. Thanks to his imaginative and aggressive play, in addition to his witty personality and good sense of humor, Aronian has also become a fan favorite across the chess world. However, in the Champions Chess Tour, he has yet to fully showcase his immense capabilities, sometimes coming up short against the younger generation of elite players. This time, Aronian faces the daunting task of competing against a new wave of prodigious talents, many of whom are less than half his age. The question remains, can his wealth of experience and profound understanding of the game help him prevail over the dynamic and innovative strategies of his younger rivals?
And we just heard that video about Levon, how dynamic he can be, and his experience, David, I think it does pay off in some pivotal matchups, but how will it pay off against somebody as sharp as Alireza Firouzja?
Yeah, he needs to make sure Firouzja doesn't get those messy types of positions that Firouzja thrives in. Often experience is knowing what you're strong at, but also knowing your opponent's weaknesses. And Levon, if he can steer the game up his direction, as he did against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, then he will fancy his chances. I'm not sure he should be playing a French defense against another Frenchman, though, Robert. That was a risky strategy in the first game. Either way, Levon, he'll be hoping for an early birthday present. It's his birthday next week. And yeah, that was a great start to the day, at least for him.
Are you reading my mind? Because before we head to a break, I was going to ask you if Levon would play the French again. So, I mean, now what am I thinking after that?
I mean, you're the Morgan Freeman, I'm the David Attenborough. We're so in sync, Robert. What can you say? Levon, I think that's a big question for him. Opening choice is going to be key in this next clash.
Yeah, he wants to take it down a path where he feels more comfortable, and he can put Alireza on the clock because, David, Alireza, he has been in immense time trouble. We know he's the Bullet Chess champion, and he is that for a reason, but against Levon, who typically plays very quickly, that can backfire if you're Firouzja.
Definitely. Firouzja, I think just the inconsistency that the clock handling has led to throughout his career. Classical, it has come back to haunt him at the very highest level, occasionally in these rapid formats. You might as well start the game with 1 minute. At least then he knows the pace to keep. At least then he can kind of get in the zone. But it has cost him on occasion. So Levon will be hoping, maybe that's his match strategy, to get a position he can handle, that there's not too many fireworks, where Firouzja is already low on the clock. But I'm going to ask you for your predictions again, put you on the spot, Robert. What do you think? Who's going to start hottest in this next game?
Ooh, well, I'm going to do that thing where I say, you know, I'm not going to answer that now because we are still winning for Alireza Firouzja, not because he's overslept, but because the first match ended so quickly. So we're going to head to a break, and I may answer that question on the flip side of it. So everybody, you know, get stretched, get relaxed, maybe put on your favorite show for a little bit. But when we return, it will be Alireza Firouzja against Levon Aronian here in the Julius Baer Generation Cup, a part of the Champions Chess Tour.
Do you think you are one of the best chess commentators in the world?
Wow, starting deep already. Yes, but not the best.
That's a lie. So he started off telling the truth, and then it was a lie.
Oh! I don't think I'm the best. I think Naroditsky's...
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And Leko, maybe.
Would you rather be competing in events or cover them?
Oh, I would rather, these days, cover them.
He had to consider that, but he's telling the truth.
Personal growth? Yeah. This is amazing. I'm proud of you.
Thanks. If you asked me this like 3 years ago, I would have said differently. Yeah. Definitely. Even 2 years ago. But
yeah, I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, how much do I owe you for the therapy session?
I don't know. Do you think I'm the best chess player of all time?
Yes. I could just see the pleading in your eyes. That's why I had to say it.
That's a lie.
Oh! I mean, Gary did pop into my head first, so...
Okay. This is over. I'm done.
Alexander Grischuk has consistently been among the world's chess elite for more than 2 decades, and he remains one of the strongest speed chess players, even against rivals more than half his age. The 40-year-old has captivated fans with his witty personality, often with humorous takes and candid answers in interviews, which has made him a cult figure in the chess community.
Thanks. Also, there are 3 more PCR tests, so everything is ahead there.
The Russian Grandmaster has also gained fans thanks to his remarkable ability to navigate complex positions under extreme time pressure. As a 3-time World Blitz champion, he is the only other player besides Magnus Carlsen who has multiple world titles in that format. With medals also in the World Rapid Championship, the 40-year-old is considered one of the giants in speed chess. However, his performances online haven't quite matched his achievements over the board, and he often comes up short compared to his younger rivals. Despite this, he has shown glimpses of his brilliance in recent events, as proven by strong performances in Titled Tuesday and by his victory in Division 2 of the CrunchLabs Masters, which earned him a spot in Division 1. Now the question remains, can Grischuk's experience, creativity, and resilience help him reclaim his place at the top in the Julius Baer Generation Cup?
All I ever wanted was like to be accepted by people and this and that. But I'm walking into hip hop, solving Rubik's Cubes and talking about anime and Star Wars, and it's like not a vibe. But through it, I was always myself. Oh man, the feeling I had the first time I saw the Rubik's Cube was like, it's only begun. Because I was like, it took me that long to do it. And I just wasn't satisfied. Then I'm like, okay, cool, what's next? And that's also how I feel about chess. I love chess and I love the Rubik's Cube because you can't beat them. It's like a game you can't beat. That's what's so cool about it. And the only person that you're really essentially playing against is yourself. Yeah, I was like 24 years old and I got a Rubik's Cube and I went on YouTube and I told myself I was not gonna leave the room until I finished it. And I was in the room for 14 hours.
Good news for everyone. Alireza Firouzja has stepped into the arena. He will be taking on Levon Aronian. He did not expect to face Levon this quickly, but that's what happens when Levon Aronian's in his great shape, dispatching Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. I'm Robert Hess, alongside me, Grandmaster David Howell. David, it's a long-awaited matchup just because that earlier clash was decided so quickly, but now we know Firouzja is ready. At least he's there, but will he be ready for Levon Aronian's chess?
Yeah, long awaited in all senses of the phrase. This is it. This is the bracket now. This is what's at stake. A spot in the grand final against Magnus Carlsen. It's going to be a huge match, this one, coming up. Firouzja, I wonder what he was up to, whether he was doing his last minute preparations up until a couple of minutes ago. Who knows? But yeah, he will be facing an in-form Aronian who's been super consistent throughout this event. And Magnus, I'm sure, will be watching as well with a keen eye.
Oh, well, Magnus respects both of these two players greatly. We know that Alireza always gives him a tough time outside of the Speed Chess Championship. That was a blip for Alireza and dominance from Magnus Carlsen. But we're not talking about that head-to-head. Right now, we're talking about Firouzja and Aronian, two of the best players in chess history. I think we could say that already, despite Alireza's young age. And as we see, they're knotted up. 4 wins apiece, 14 draws in rapid chess, and they're playing in the Chess.com Masters, a draw, 2023. 2022, Firouzja won 2.5, but before that, in the 2019 Speed Chess Championship, Levon Aronian, he won by the skin of his teeth, 13.5, 12.5, so a very combative history between these two.
Yeah, it's rare to see such level head-to-head. Often we see certain players, due to their styles, dominating certain opponents, or we see certain players better in certain time formats. But no, this one, no favorites, and it's another French defense. Talking of favorites, maybe not your favorite opening here, Robert, but Levon mixes it up. He goes for this last move, bishop to b4, instead of developing his knight as he previously did against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and Firouzja has to think. An early surprise in the opening.
And Levon was using this against Vidit Gujrathi in the match play to qualify for Division 1. And in many of those games, White went pawn to e5, eventually brought the queen out to g4, and Black put his king on f8. So we will likely not see a castle king. And if Firouzja prepared, he would have looked at this line, David, because Levon played it just the other day.
Yeah, it's trendy stuff at the Olympiad as well. I believe Wesley So played it against Peter Lecco, and clearly, if Wesley's playing it, Levon, a teammate of his, maybe it's something they've studied together. And okay, we see not the main line, an older line with Black retreating a bishop, and here you called it queen coming out to g4. I mean, what a moment to do that. The knight on c3 was hanging, the bishop on a5 was hanging, but nope, White attacked a pawn, and the Black king defends that pawn. Suddenly the White knight jumping forward. Black is a pawn up, but that's irrelevant right now, Robert. It was that one word, dynamism. It's all about who can play more energetically in this ensuing middle game.
And Levon has played energetically throughout the Julius Baer Generation Cup. It's kind of like he's gone back a couple decades and he's just saying, I am fresh off this Olympiad success, both for his country and for himself. And now he is choosing some sharp lines. And this could be a storyline here, David. Look at the clock. Alireza still has plenty of time left, but Levon has more time than he started with.
Impressive. He wants another quick, blistering victory, if possible. He's clearly keeping up the momentum from his previous match against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave earlier today. For those of you just joining, Levon was speedy, he was quick, he was accurate, and got the win. And okay, he's developing his pieces. Robert, I've got to ask, who do you prefer in this type of position? Would you take the activity that the white pieces have? Active queen on g4, knight threatening to jump in potentially, or would you take Black's extra pawn, solid pawn structure, and maybe the downside, the king that will never castle?
Well, unless Alireza, in addition to being a superstar grandmaster and a blossoming fashion designer, if he's also a great actor, then I'll take his chances. But the way he's spending his time leads me to believe that he is less familiar with the ins and outs of this position. And Levon, look at how quickly he is responding to Alireza's moves. He strikes with f6. He played in a line just like this the other day against Vidit. So I'm going to have to go with Levon Aronian, despite what the evaluation bar says, slightly better for White. I like the experience and I like the opening choice because Levon, he is saying, I'm not going to wait for you to come after me. I'm going to bring it to you right from the get-go.
Yeah, and this is a good tip for everyone at home. Sometimes you don't have to play the most objectively correct openings. You don't have to go for Petrov's, Berlin defenses, where it's all about solidity, equalizing, making a draw. Sometimes surprising your opponent, especially in speed chess, that can really pay dividends. And yeah, I love it as well, I've got to say, Robert. I started experimenting the last few years of my kind of active playing career with French, the Caro, all these openings that I previously considered maybe slightly second rate, but they give fresh positions. And if you know them better than your opponent, if you gain 2-3 extra minutes on the clock, that can really pay off later. So playing dynamically with black, that's a real trend. Magnus has been doing it for years. And I agree, the clock handling here, it is a bit worrisome. Firouzja down already several minutes. And okay, playing a good solid move, taking back a pawn, but we're going to see some more chaos guaranteed in the center right now.
We saw this exact position in Vidit against Aronian, and we saw the knights get swapped on e5, knight takes e6, and actually maybe we're just going to see this again. Once the pieces get traded on e6, black played queen f6 in that game and was able to not just hold a balance. I think Levon won that game, in fact. So Levon is very familiar with the ins and outs, with the particulars, and I mean, he's got more time than he started with. This is really bad news for Alireza. He may stumble into a position he just doesn't know what to do in, and he may not be able to come back from.
Yeah, lightning striking again. We know that Firouzja wasn't late or wasn't delayed to this match because he was doing his opening prep. That's pretty much guaranteed now. And you called it, Robert. This type of position, I mean, if I was looking at it with fresh eyes, if I didn't see the clock, I would say maybe white has a long-term advantage because of the bishops. White now trying to open things up. I think a good, very logical move there from Firouzja, his last turn. But black has the center. Black's knight, if it ever gets out, has plenty of squares to jump to. I can imagine it landing on a square such as d4 later. Yeah, it just looks very imbalanced, this type of position. And Levon, with his 3.5 extra minutes, I think he might be a slight favorite. Yeah, what do you think here? Are we going to see a bit of a grind in the endgame or still fireworks ahead despite the lack of queens?
I won't call it theory, but I'm out of my knowledge of this position because against Vidit, or I should say Vidit played f4 instead of c4, and then black pushed the pawn up to e4, and we had a different dynamic in that game. But it seems like Levon, he plays knight to e7. He does that so relatively quickly. So even if he's out of move-to-move preparation, we're still within the realm of his preparation where he understands the ideas super well. And we have seen a trade on d5. The good news for Levon, his knight can get active. The good news for Alireza, we are out of Levon's pure preparation. The position is opening up. That's usually good news for the bishop pair.
That's right. And the main thing is he dodged any opening bombs. He's managed to avoid anything too sharp. I think that's the last thing you want when you're low on the clock, when your opponent's blitzing. You don't want to go into too complicated a position because chances are your opponent might have studied deeper than you, and you're pretty much playing against a computer at that point. So he's managed to get out of the book, as you mentioned that, Robert. And Levon takes back the pawn and castles queenside. Firouzja never ever steps away from the most combative moves here. He gains time against the black knight, but the white king, perhaps not the safest on this flank. Given a question mark at least, Robert, do you think that's a harsh evaluation of white's decision there?
Yeah, I think it's very harsh, but I think what it allows is what we're seeing. King b1, knight c3 check does seem available to black, and then we're getting bishops of opposite color, where it's not a draw. I'm not claiming this ends the game, we split the point. The black bishop is attacking f2. It can establish itself on d4, and if the white rooks don't get open lines, then black can get active. And we already see the evaluation is turning in Levon's favor. a3 can be snagged. The one issue that Levon's currently having, David, is the rook on h8. If you put that rook over on c8, we would have been talking about maybe a decisive edge for black, but it's stuck in the corner. He plays rook c7. He's going by the mantra, draw with black and try to win with white.
And that mantra served him well in the previous clash. He drew in a very kind of well-played game against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave before winning in convincing fashion with white. So yeah, perhaps rook back to c7, not the most ambitious, but totally understandable, Robert. I think in his shoes, we might well have done the same. He's eliminated most of the danger here. The one downside for black is that the bishop temporarily a bit misplaced. The rook, of course, still needs to get in the game. And white's bishop now does actually sit on quite a nice diagonal. I can imagine itself posting up, hitting the b7 pawn as well. White's rook will come over with gain of time. I still think draw by far the most likely, but Levon might regret that slightly passive decision to retreat his rook. Of course, we're influenced by the eval bar, but yeah, he made that decision in the blink of an eye, and perhaps it was worth investing another 30 seconds or so to weigh up the options. Now he's thinking, and what do you think's going through his mind? Is it just how to bail out with a draw? Has he got something else going on there?
And now he is trying to calmly sit and calculate things of how to make the draw. But it's very good teaching advice by you, David, that a previous position where he had the 2 rooks on the board, he could have slowed down and looked for something better. That's the great thing about playing your preparation and conserving the time. You have it to use. When the game ends, it doesn't matter if you have 5 minutes or 5 seconds. The game's over. You don't get to keep that time for the next game. So for Levon, well, he just wanted to make a draw with black. I think that much is clear. And now the question is, how do we get to that draw? Is there going to be potential for white with an kingside outside past pawn, right? Like, h4, g4, things of that nature. Or does Levon have everything under control, and can he just bring his king into the center, as he has just done, then slide his rook into the game? And if rooks are traded, David, I think we can immediately say the game should be a simple draw.
That's right. Opposite color bishops do have this reputation of this drawish quality, but it's often when the major pieces have been eliminated. So once queens, rooks are off the board, opposite color bishops do lend themselves to those kind of ships in the night type of positions where black controls the dark squares, white controls the light squares, nothing to be done, no passed pawns. But I do still prefer white's position for now. I can imagine the white rook coming across, maybe stepping up and swinging across the third rank. Black does have an isolated h-pawn, for example. A bit of a target there. Levon wisely trying to trade off pawns. This is not a pawn sacrifice. Bishop takes on b7 right now would allow the black rook to swing across, and black would soon regain the material. That being said, Robert, I do fear that Levon, he's got the draw on his mind a bit too much. It's not just the fact he's making slightly passive decisions on the board, but that mindset, it can be a bit negative and it can spiral. I've been there myself trying to draw against these top players in the world, and Firouzja will keep the pressure, keep the tension. He'll keep the rooks on the board, and there's no guarantee yet of that result.
It's a really good point that, let's say you try to trade off all the pieces, you want those rooks to come off. Those rooks aren't necessarily leaving the board just because you want them to. The bishop on e4 stares at 2 different pawns that will need some attention. b7 will be hanging if white can protect b4, and h7, that means that the rook kind of needs to stay in contact with it. And if ab4, thank you for another open file. Maybe that white rook will slide to a1 later. It has d1, it has c1, and there are many different lines that that rook could explore. So it's still equal. Both players know that, but it's not just a complete draw at the moment, and that means that both players will need to continue thinking about their next moves and not just assume that the half point is guaranteed.
Yeah, and that's why Levon slowed down, right? He played super quickly, that whole opening, clearly opening preparation. Middle game, very good decisions. Maybe the only small questionable slip was retreating the rook, going for the draw, and maybe losing a bit of the initiative, but ultimately it's still level, but he's just trying to ensure that he doesn't make any further mistakes. f3 saves the f2 pawn for white. And yeah, that question, Robert, you mentioned it. Is b7 edible at some point? How does black defend it? How does black keep everything kind of protected? If black had 2 moves, if black could push the h-pawn, maybe put a bishop in the center, and then start swinging his rook away somewhere, then total equality. But okay, he does start with that first step. So now bishop takes pawn, I guess, will be met by the rook slide. And okay, at least some stuff to calculate for the first time in a while.
I don't think that black's getting the pawn back right away. So it's an interesting moment for Levon. And I know most of the chat, they thought that Alireza would win this match and go on to face Magnus Carlsen. Alireza's been in such great form throughout the Champions Chess Tour, can hardly blame them. But Levon has been sturdy, at least before this moment. I feel like he's been nearly unstoppable today. David, what is his plan? Because rook b8, bishop c6, bishop c5 was maybe the idea, but white can push that pawn forward. And now we're talking about a legitimate extra pawn for white, and yet Levon pushes forward on the king side. Do you like his strategy, or do you think it's a bit risky?
Wow, it is a bit risky. I've got to say, white now has a clear extra pawn, and it's a pass pawn. Let's just quickly jump in with the analysis board to show that last point you mentioned, Robert, because it was key and it was potentially missed by Levon. I think he was banking, from afar at least, on this move. And it does look like you have some indirect action, but you mentioned the move bishop to c6. And no matter where you move the bishop, if you give a check, the white king protects its pawn. And if you try to pin and win the b-pawn, it can step forward to a safe square. And ultimately, he's gambled. He's banked on his kingside forces here, Levon. If we go back to the game, he pushed his pawn to f5. Now he's pushing a pawn to h4. He's making the g-pawn a backward pawn. He's making it a weakness that can be targeted. So I'm going to say risk, but he's making the best of maybe a few bad decisions a bit earlier. And yeah, it's still hard to imagine white ever knocking this black bishop out the way and the b-pawn advancing too far. That being said, it's definitely a fight and it's definitely white on the front foot.
Sometimes I feel like the cowardly lion watching these top players go at it, because I'm like, I would never give that pawn up. That's an outside passer. That can become a queen. And Levon's like, yes, so what? Opposite colored bishops. I'm just going to go after the white king side. And Levon doesn't seem particularly bothered, at least for the time being, but I truly am worried about his position. Look how active the white king is. The bishop and the rook for white, they're working in conjunction with one another. Rook c2 can always defend that second rank. And the rooks, if they get traded, I understand that there are high chances for a draw, but why should white trade the rooks anytime soon? I mean, maybe is Levon trying to get his e-pawn running? That seems quite slow to my eyes.
Yeah, he would love to push this pawn forward if possible. Right now, the white bishop does guard e4. It's not quite on the agenda yet. I guess he can wait. I mean, maybe rook d4 would support the e-pawn pushing. First, he tries to create a weakness. He hits the undefended h2 pawn. If white pushes forward, it's that horrible structure of white's three pawns dominated by one black pawn, and you'll never be able to move your whole king side. So reluctant there for Firouzja to move the pawn forward. He could defend by pushing his g-pawn, but that is committal as well. You let the black h-pawn survive, maybe push forward, lock down the king side. Yeah, you mentioned the cowardly lion, Robert. Here it looks like Alireza, he's the laughing cow, the cow behind him. He's trying to make most of his extra pawn. I have a feeling he's going to play the most ambitious move. He's going to push his g-pawn 1 or 2 squares forward, but that comes with risk.
I'm also looking at bishop c8, just trying to cut the black rook off while attacking the f5 pawn, and then trying to go b5 and eventually b6. It's not the easiest to pull off thanks to that bishop on g1, bishops being long-range pieces. That's actually helping in the defense from Levon. And I think what else will help him is that minute lead on the clock. So all that time he was able to save up in the opening, this is where it comes in handy, because Alireza may have a moment where he even is winning, but it's only one narrow path that he may not be able to find without time on the clock.
Robert, you dodged my question earlier about predictions. What do you think here? Is Levon going to hold? Are we going to see a turnaround? Or is Firouzja going to be able to make the most of his extra pawn?
Well, the way that this game is continuing here, now after g3, thank you for asking me just at this moment. I do think that Levon is going to hold, but I still think it's going to be a tough task. I don't think Alireza will make it easy on him, but I'm wondering if at some moment Black will try to spring free a pawn in the center, but what could be a nightmare is that Black gets one pass pawn in the center, but White gets 2 different knight pawns running past, right? If you can get it in, an e4 trade there, and then you have a G and a B pawn that Black will struggle to stop.
Yeah, actually in some of those types of positions, even if the rooks get traded, suddenly White with those two, well, the trousers they call it, the 2 passed pawns that are split far apart, suddenly there will be chances to break Black's dark square blockade. In the meantime, ooh, tricks. This isn't Firouzja giving back the extra pawn after f takes g4, which I'm assuming is the most natural move. White's rook will slide across to the g2 square, hitting the black bishop and then regaining the pawn on the next turn. So trickery from Firouzja as he ticks down to 2 minutes. 2 versus 3. Yeah, I have a feeling that this might end decisively. I'm going to say Firouzja is a favorite here. Just feels like things have gone in his favor. Levon just regretting some subpar decisions earlier. He's suffering here when he didn't need to. He had a great outcome from the opening. So I'm just looking at the momentum. That being said, it is Levon. He's a very classy guy. He might be looking for other solutions right now. Robert, Magnus is definitely watching with interest right now.
Well, if we were watching Magnus Carlsen play this endgame, we'd be like, we've seen it a million times before and we'll see it again. But right now, for Levon, looking at his clock, still a slight lead there. And I thought he would play e4, but I also thought it wouldn't be a good move. So he does go for this. It's actually considered a blunder, and is the reason that white can successfully take on f5. The bishop covers f3, and when there's a pin along the third rank, white can actually step forward and block that pin while defending the bishop. But I thought, David, that this may give black, at least in his head, some potential to sacrifice his bishop for one pawn, use his king and rook to take the other, and it may be rook and bishop versus rook, which does have drawish tendencies.
That's right. I don't think we should get too carried away with the eval bar right now. Maybe the computer does foresee that type of endgame, Robert, rook and bishop versus rook, where, oh, good luck to Levon Aronian defending that with no time on the clock, but at least it should be at best play a draw. Maybe he was banking his chances on the e-pawn as well. To my eyes, if this were a bullet game at least, I would push my pawn to e3 and just bank on the fact that it might later become a queen, 2 squares away from touchdown. But no, he does trade off. He tries to get as many pieces off the board as possible. That black pawn would have been blockaded on the light squares anyway, and that whole line, Robert the Prophet, is coming to pass. Rook c3 now does defend the third rank, and moment of truth. Can Firouzja trade rooks? Can he defend this pawn? The blue arrow appears. It says it's the best move, the only move to keep things intact, and this is a winning endgame. The pawns are far enough apart, Robert. It's the rule of 3. There's 3 full files between them. This is winning for white.
And one of the questions I have is the white bishop even under attack? Because with 2 separate pass pawns, you can sometimes give up the bishop and then run both of the pawns at once. So like b5 becomes an idea. But the reason I wouldn't play b5 is that shut the king's avenue down. You want your king to lead the way. King c4, king b5, and either a6 or c6, and then push your b pawn. If you play b5 too early, when the white king approaches, the black bishop sits on b6 and says, how are you actually going to get in here? There may be no way forward, so do not push that pawn too hastily.
Yeah, I don't think Levon realizes yet. We haven't seen a reaction on the camera from him. I think he's just going to try and follow with his king. As soon as the white king steps forward, the black bishop will step back, guarding the f-pawn, and the white king will have to sideline itself, and only then the black king will block. But we might well see a zugzwang. I think at some point, black's forces, they won't be able to control both pawns. I mean, this is something we're taught when we're young, the rule of 3. When I'm talking here about the c-file, d-file, e-file, it does give the white king enough room to kind of do a shimmy, like step to the left and only later step back to the right. And Robert, I mean, we see the eval bar. Neither of the players can be 100% sure, but it does look like it's a winning endgame.
I think Firouzja is sure, because the black king, if it ever stepped away, white would go king c5 to push the b pawn. So this is the status quo that Levon wants to keep. You know, the bishop is in line with the b4 pawn. It also covers the f6 push. But here for Alireza, as he spends time, he brings his king back to c4. The bishop needs to choose a diagonal now. Is it going to go back to the king side? It does indeed. And now he wants to play b5. But again, there may be some kind of fortress setup with bishop to d8. But is there going to be a zugzwang? That's the essential question. I think that there will be in many positions, but you have to time it well if you're Alireza.
Yeah, fully agree. At some point, you have to give black the move and force black to commit, either allowing your b pawn forward, f pawn forward, or the white king to slide in. If the white king ever landed up kind of in front of either pawn, supporting coming forward, then it would be winning. But right now, still some hard work to be done. 28 seconds. Oh, Levon. I mean, that's a great poker face, I've got to say, Robert. And no matter whether he knows or not what the result should be.
And this is table base. So this is definitively a win for white. There isn't an objective question here, but now the question is, look at Alireza's clock, down under 10 seconds. Will he push a pawn too quickly and allow a draw? This is the best thing to do, David, is try to gain a little bit more time with bishop moves, because only later, if you find the right moment to push your pawn, because you can't take those moves back.
Yeah, this is where Hikaru Nakamura would be making 10, 15 very, very quick moves with his bishop, only then deciding whether to push a pawn forward. In the meantime, he will have gained a little bit of time on the clock. And yeah, right now, not much has changed. Firouzja down to 3 seconds though, Robert. Oh, he's really living life on the edge. You mentioned it. This is just how he plays chess.
But he's doing the right thing right now. The king on the queen side wasn't doing much good. Now the king can snake around. F4, G4, H5, G6, and you see the pawns, the trousers as you call them. It's a split, and just like in bowling, you don't want that split for Levon. He wishes the B pawn was next to a C pawn, because then he can control the dark squares. Now the white king is in, and that should be it. And you see the king, it continues marching for Levon, for Alireza here, the king wants to keep going. And you see, Levon, he doesn't know what to do because at some point his king will have to budge from being in front of the f-pawn, or the bishop will be stuck trying to keep the white king from the f8 square and covering the b-pawn. So still great defense from Levon. He's actually not caving. He is really putting up a great fight, but now is the critical moment. If he moves his bishop, say on the g1, a7 diagonal, the white king steps up to g7 and then g6. So he wishes, does Alireza, he go play king h7, king g6. He probably needs to bring his bishop to the other diagonal, to the square a2 at the right moment. But he's just going back and forth. 5 seconds for Firouzja, 35 seconds now for Levon. He's doing a very good job of hanging in there. If he knows he's lost, he has been a great actor, not showing it. And we see the king up to e7. Now, if the king moves back, king h7 to g6. That is the critical idea that Levon has to try and stop. But that king, can it get out? The bishop may... Where does it belong? It goes to c8. If the king goes back to e8, we may still have this problem where the bishop is not covering the key square. So the king's going back to e7 as long as it can. Firouzja, under 5 seconds. He needs to find a quick plan, and he is not doing it yet. King h7, maybe the king needs to go back, but we're getting in the danger zone of a repetition. I'm not sure where exactly Firouzja's bishop has been. It keeps going back and forth, back and forth. Now, king e8 would be bad because of king h7, and this might be it. The king cannot successfully move, as the white king will go to f8 if it goes to f6. If it goes back to e8, finally, the king can slink around back to g6, where it can help the f-pawn go. Now, king g7. Bishop before king g6. The bishop, it needs to choose. The king moves, but the bishop can now move back for white. And soon we may get a Zugzwang. King e7, move your bishop again. If the king moves, f6, we punch that through. If the bishop moves, f6 is still coming. And now f6, that's where the money move is coming from, putting it in green. And you see it on Levon's face. I think he now knows that the end is near. 2, 1, and is he losing on time? No, he barely gets the move off, but time is not the problem. It's the queening, the promotion. Alireza Firouzja, he makes chat proud. He wins game 1 from what looked like the most equal of equal positions. Firouzja gets the dub, and Levon Aronian, unfortunately for him, he suffers defeat in the opening game. It looked like he played the opening perfectly. He prepared. It's a great line. He was equal, in fact, slightly better. But unfortunately for Levon Aronian, just the equal position did not mean a draw. We do have a winner in game 1, and that is the Raging Bull, Alireza Firouzja. And we see here 1-0 in Firouzja's camp. He wins against Levon Aronian, and that game, it was one that you expected to go into a draw. But David, we saw the final result. Alireza Firouzja, he is a man on a mission. He is not to be stopped.
Yeah, Robert, just like me there for a second, Levon Aronian's chances were gone because Firouzja, just that patience in the endgame, just the way he nursed that advantage, kept his cool, even with the clock ticking down. It was mightily impressive, I've got to say. Opposite color bishops, we talk about them a lot, but we all learned something right there in that game.
We certainly did. So, David, I know you're one of the world's best coaches. Why don't you put on your coaching hat here, take the commentator one off, and give a little bit of game review for everybody to enjoy?
Let's do just that, Robert, as we jump into maybe the start of the end for Levon Aronian. And it might seem like an innocuous moment. White has just planted a rook on the 7th rank. Levon Aronian here, though, had plenty of time on his clock. He had a 3-minute time advantage as black, and he actually had an objective advantage on the board as well. It does look like the black king is cut off. However, the black rook extremely active, the black bishop with a beautiful launch pad, a beautiful outpost in the center. He did not need to panic here. Actually, planting the bishop in the center would have given the black the advantage, but also bringing the other rook into the play. This is a good tip for everyone at home. Improve your worst place piece. It might look difficult to get this rook out, but by sliding it across to g8, maybe even bringing it in, if possible, black would have been on top. For example, if white takes a pawn here, black's rook comes in, the rook will slide across to d4, maybe even down, and the white king would be the one in trouble. Instead, Levon Aronian made a step in the wrong direction, both literally here and figuratively, retreating back to c7. We see the question mark suddenly after a trade of rooks. White's bishop came out, white's pawn started stepping forward. A bishop was dominant in the center of the board, and later the final mistake was pushing this pawn forward. If we fast forward to to e4 here, Suddenly, he was 2 pawns down Levon Aronian, and opposite color bishops did not save him. We saw this endgame a bit later, Zugzwang playing the key role, where Black's king and bishop had to break their fortress, and ultimately Firouzja making the most of those 2 extra pawns. So play through that one, everyone at home again. You will learn a lot. And in the meantime, it is Aronian who needs to make the comeback.
That is not a sentence that I thought we would hear. Levon needs to make a comeback. He's been here for years, that's true. But also the opening he played looked very level, opposite color bishops. David, it didn't matter just that it looked like something. Alireza Firouzja had other ideas, and he played a very brilliant endgame.
Yeah, we associate Firouzja with fire on the board, crazy tactics, eval bar swings, just that deep dark forest, a pure mess. But no, he can also show off his endgame skills. He's such a universal player, and that was impressive. Levon, we know how great he is with the white pieces. He's by far not out of this, but he needs to come back, and he needs to avoid that type of decision he made with Rook C7 in the previous game.
And sometimes, look at that, is that almost like a SpongeBob cup from Firouzja? But what I was going to say is, sometimes it's not even the result that's most impactful. Like losing a game that you played well in, you're like, I can get over it, I can win the second game. But losing a game where you out-prepared your opponent, were completely level in, and then you just somehow collapse in the end game, that sometimes gets you to question your own level, even though we did see Levon play a great match against MVL. This is a different opponent, and he is going to be kicking himself for losing that game.
That's right. He didn't play too badly, Levon, but it was just the nature of the decisions. We talked about the risk earlier of playing for a draw. We've all been there. Myself, I'm sure you've been there on occasion, Robert, where we face these kind of scary opponents and we're like, okay, a draw is fine. A draw is a good result, especially with Black. But ultimately, it does set us kind of back a few steps. It puts us in this negative mindset, and that did come back to haunt him, Levon. So okay, it's time for a total reset. He's so experienced. He's been here before, must-win situations. He's fantastic, Levon, with the white pieces. So he's still capable. And Firouzja, I don't think solid is in his vocabulary, Robert. So still plenty of twists and turns ahead in this match.
And we saw what Levon did with the white pieces against Maxime. Why can't he do it another time? And for Alireza, as you said, he's not a player who likes to play solidly. He prefers dynamic chess that could play to Levon's benefit, because sometimes you want to curl up in a ball, think, I'm just going to make a draw here by being steady. You don't even realize when you're getting outplayed. So for Levon, he has to dig deep into his wealth of experience and come up with an opening that will make Firouzja uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I wonder whether that strategy will be similar to the way he started the game against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Okay, he does open with the king's pawn. It's no Sicilians, though. And wow, Robert, pawn to d3 on move 2. I'm not sure I've seen that so often at the top level. It doesn't develop a piece. It blocks in the white light squared bishop. He just wants to get a position in play, but no, it's the delayed king's gambit. Wow, this is very direct stuff from white.
Wow, I wasn't sure to call it a delayed King's Gambit or an accelerated Vienna, but either way, Levon says, I need to make sure that this pawn structure is not symmetrical. I don't want a position where I'm slightly better, but that gives good drawing chances to my opponent. Right from the start, Levon is showing that he wants a fight, and for the second game in a row, after a few turns, David, we see a healthy lead on the clock for Aronian. So he came up with an obscure decision, but his intentions are clear. Trade on f4, knight c3, queen d2, castle long, and go for an initiative.
Yeah, I love it, I've got to say. I've never seen d3 before played in conjunction with this early pawn push to f4. The King's Gambit for everyone at home, just a quick action replay would have been to play this move on move 2. And this is a real gambit because the pawn can be captured. And often white does install a nice big pawn center. It's not the most sound of openings, doesn't have the best reputation on top level, but to play it in the way Levon has done is both less risky, because now the f-pawn is defended, as you mentioned there, Robert, but it's also taking the opponent out of their territory, out of their opening book. And Firouzja playing a very passive move, pawn to d6, after a bit of a think there. So Levon's 1 minute up on the clock. He's got a nice attacking position here. Whether he can castle queenside, as you pointed out, or whether he simply goes kingside now. I think he's got great chances. The f-file will be white's for the picking there. And I love this opening, I've got to say. Time to add it to everyone's repertoires.
I'm a fan. I think Levon Aronian is a fan of his current position because, I mean, g6 just played by black. That doesn't stop an eventual pawn f5 break over there on the king side. And you're just timing it right. That bishop on c1, it's going to be a nuisance that black has to deal with. A bishop on g7 for black, David, it may solve some of the initial tactical problems, but it's a passive piece. So white does have a bit more activity. A castle king for white leads to a semi-open file for rook on f1. When black castles kingside, that rook on f8, well, it's staring into its own pawn, so more space for the player with the white pieces. I think that Alireza has some work to do to try to stabilize. And h6, a slow move, David. It may allow white to go bishop e3, queen d2, and castle long.
Yeah, a slow move. Definitely expecting the white bishop to come out now. And a queen on d2. You mentioned castling long. It also stops black from castling on the king side. A nice battery on this diagonal will mean that the black king side pieces are fast and stuck in their place. But I think we might see mutual queenside castling. Firouzja, this is really creative play. I love the fact that he's been so flexible here. He pushed g6. I think everyone at home would have been itching to fianchetto their bishops immediately afterwards. But no, he realizes that actually the king might not be safe on that side of the board. So he's clearing the other flank. The black queen is going to move. I'm not sure where. And the black king might well castle on the other flank. And knight to g4 first. Very good move. Attacking white's best minor piece right now. Assuming that bishop drops back, then the black bishop... Oh, wait, Robert. Will he play h5? Will he bring it out via h6? Suddenly white's king will not be safe on the c1 square.
I'm smiling because I could sense you coming up with that on the fly. You were going to say something like, no, not so fast. And that's why queen d2 was given a question mark. I thought that was harsh at first. But now that we look at what's happened here, I think it's a completely deserved question mark. Black is far better at the moment. White is just trying all sorts of contortions to stop black from infiltrating. Bishop h6, at least now the e3 square is covered. And Levon's dream now is to slink out to c3 with the queen, not until the bishop goes to h6, everybody. If the queen went to c3 on the next turn, bishop b4, it pins and wins the white queen over there. So you have to time these things well. But white will play h3, David, kick the black knight back, and I think we can sense that black is no worse, but I would ignore the evaluation for the moment because I don't think black is better in the way that the players really note that.
Yeah, black is definitely not winning. It's definitely nothing concrete right now. It's just about the fact that black potentially can take advantage of the fact he's got slightly more activity here. White has been forced to beat a retreat. Bishop on g1, knight on d1. I'm not too positive about those pieces. So maybe it is about accelerating the pace of the game, but ultimately white will get his turn at the kickback, starting with h3. And that's why Firouzja is investing time, Robert. He senses it as well. If he has something strong now, he's going to be in great shape for the rest of this game. He's going to be out of danger, at least in the near future. But if he's going to have to start stepping back his knight, if he's going to have to slowly maybe make queen moves and then castle queenside as per the original plan, then Levon will get some time to kind of regroup the forces and go again, a second wave. So right now, high accuracy from both players, but a very creative, unique position.
Sorry, David, I looked to see what black should do here. I'm wondering why it would be that much better. One of the key lines involves black playing f7 to f5. In a game you only need to draw, is that really a move you want to make, right? Your impulse isn't to throw all your pawns forward and weaken your control of key squares. Your impulse is to say, no, let's just trade pieces and I can hold on. So f5 in some of these positions, are you kidding me? That's definitely not what Alireza really wants.
Ooh, that's a really good point, Robert. I mean, F for Firouzja, F5, maybe him out of all the top players. I could see him kind of going on the front foot, but yeah, in the back of his mind, he'll know it isn't necessary. Black can maintain a decent position in other ways, so I'm skeptical. What do you think? Will we see F5 and Firouzja going for the win despite already being in the lead?
I don't think so. It looks way too risky to give control of the g5 square to make your e5 pawn feel more vulnerable. And I just had to look what the engine suggests as the optimal play, because sometimes we just rely on the evaluation bar. I'm talking about myself, even as a commentator. I'm like, oh, black is better. And I can see why, but I don't see the how. And so what to do here? F5 either before or after bishop h6, it feels like you're playing a little bit too riskily when a half point secures you the match. And if not for f5, well then white will play h3, kick that knight out of there, and get great control of some key dark squares, g5, some pressure on the e5 pawn. So knight d4 played, it was a good looking move, I have to say, but white will start that process David, kick the knight out from g4.
Yeah, the blue arrow appears. He has to kick the knight out here and now before it's too late, before black starts swarming all over white's forces. And okay, black playing with tempo right now. He's going very active. The white queen didn't have too many squares. She was hit, and she steps forward to c3. She had to defend her c2 pawn. Don't want to get too tangled up there. And okay, trades are going to free up white's position. I've got to say, not only, Robert, did Firouzja maybe not take the most active path with f5, but he's also burned a lot of time on the clock, and already he's the one forced to be accurate with a check. Yes, he's stopping the white king from castling, but this feels weird suddenly. It's a really awkward position for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, there's a check. The king doesn't want to step forward, although it can go up to e2. That is not out of the question. There could be some sharp play to follow. But if you play bishop f2 here for white, black takes it. We see a trade on that square. White is getting ready to castle, but I am a bit worried about doing that, I have to be honest, because the black bishop will land on e3, and there will be a ton of pressure heading in white's direction, and there may even be a bishop takes h3 with a draw by repetition in some line. So I'm just getting a little bit deep into the weeds, but it just goes to show that Levon may have to take serious risk himself to continue to have winning chances.
Yeah, let's just quickly jump in and show that variation. I think Levon's going to have a bit of a think here, wisely investing his time even. Bishop f2, as you mentioned, blocks the check with gain of time, forcing a trade, but ultimately it might not be worth it. This is a pin, and I think you're right to be reluctant there, Robert. I think that would have been my first instinct too, but Levon Aronian, okay, after a think, he plays what might be the best move, an inspired decision, moving his king. It is safe for now. The center is blocked. Yes, he's not really threatening this knight because there's a pin along the h-file. White's rook is undefended in the corner, but at least now he's asking Firouzja, are you ever going to retreat? If you retreat, then the white bishop will come to life. The black queen will be lacking squares. I love it. I don't know who's better. Eval Bar says level. How can it be level, this wilder position? But at least this is the type of position Levon wanted from the start. Imbalanced and a bit crazy. Firouzja down on the clock as well.
When you ask, whose chances does this benefit more than the other, I would definitely say Levon. It's getting to be a hectic position. Levon is playing very quickly, so Alireza has a big decision right now. Does he castle queenside? Does it actually get your king to safety? Is a7 hanging, right? You castle queenside, I can just pick off that a7 pawn because I can play bishop b6 next to go after the black king. So where is the black king going? I don't really think you want to castle kingside. And is h takes g4 available in the right moment? Because the queen for now can escape, right? hg4, queen takes rook, knight f2, there's back to h4 you go. So it can survive in this particular line, but there could be a time, especially if black castles kingside, where you take that knight, take on e5, and go right after the king. So there are some serious questions that need to be answered.
Ooh, you called it. He's jumped to the king side, and Levon answers immediately, not even pausing for breath there.
Oh.
Robert, this is crazy.
Yeah, he wants to take on g4 with the bishop on h6 loose, but the white king is still wide open. David, this is exactly what you want if you're Levon, but is there a way for black to try to force a draw somehow? Is there bishop takes g4? What's catching your eye right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting carried away. Takes. I mean, everything's coming with check as well. You can take this pawn on g4. You're hitting this bishop. You're also attacking this bishop if the white rook ever moves. There's a bunch of checks. Like you said, bishop takes g4 is definitely on the cards. I'm not sure how white reacts. I guess white has to take back and hope to hide the king behind a knight. A knight is a king's best friend. The knight is just about near enough to block some checks. But Levon, to play this instantly, the psychological value here, Robert, and we're heading down that line, the latter line we mentioned there. I mean, Levon with 5 extra minutes on the clock, surely he's a favorite. He's got the extra knight. Blue arrow appears. He's got to retreat his king to f1. But, okay, he's surviving, and he's got something to live for, something to fight for now.
And king f1, f5, we mentioned how that wouldn't be played a while ago. Now f5 is incredibly tempting, going right after the white king. So I could see him deciding to step on e1, but as it's becoming clear, that's not the best square. Maybe black gets queen g2, and then unfortunately for white, you're getting all tangled up into knight f2. It looks ugly. So king f1 is required now, David. I think Levon doing the right thing by spending time, because otherwise he may just blunder at this moment. But king f1 is necessary, but how do you follow it up after f5?
Ooh, that's the key question. That's why he's burning time now. I think Levon wants to play, well, obviously one of those two king moves, but if he wants to play king f1, Then he's trying to look as far into the future as possible because he'll play that move, then switch the pace, then 2-3 instant replies again. So f5, will it be just planting his knight in front of the king? No, he goes back to the other square. There are some checks against the black king as well on those diagonals. The blue arrow appears yet again, Robert. Firouzja has to find this move. Queen to g2, trying to target the rook in the corner, which can be defended by a knight. But this one is anyone's game. Who do you think is going to be thriving more? They're both such dynamic players.
I'm throwing the evaluation bar out the window because look at this line. Queen g2, knight f2 is the only way to save your pieces. And if you go bishop e3, I think white wants king e2 now because the rook on h1 is defended by the other rook all of a sudden once the capture on f2 happens. So this is like incredible tactical awareness from Levon to see this kind of line, which allows him to play king e1 in the first place. And look at Firouzja's clock. He plays f5 quickly. But David, there might be a moment in the next few moves where he has to play an only move, but he only has 2 minutes to calculate it.
That's right. I think both players are in only move territory. If Levon plays one false step here, then he's just going to get checkmated. The white king in no man's land. Likewise, Firouzja, if he plays one bad move, he's just a piece down. So, this is what we wanted, right, Robert? This is just chaos on the board. I don't envy either of them.
No, I don't either, and both sides could be missing things here. I see a checkmate that white could easily miss if the queen comes down to g2 for black. Bishop d2 will be checkmate in some lines if the queen doesn't stay put. So I actually was relying, David, on like an e takes f5 and like queen c4 check to e4, but then I realized that I'm not controlling one of the key squares in the position, the d2 one.
Ooh, that would be, really... kind of nasty trap to fall into. Let's just show that on the board quickly while Levon thinks. If you take, give a check, the black king moves, and checkmate is threatened to queen e4, not quite in time. Now, no escape, as you mentioned there, Robert. I don't even know where to start calculating, to be honest. If this were a classical game, I would want to invest 30 minutes just trying to figure the way out of the weeds. I would want to play knight to f2, but such an awkward square. He gives a check instead.
And this is what I was actually missing. I thought here, king h2, I thought e takes f5. That's what I was relying on in my head. Queen g2 and queen e4, but this is where bishop d2 is going to hurt you. So bishop f2 being the only move, not easy. It does help the rook slide to g1. It covers the f file before it opens up. So I actually really understand it now that the arrow points it out. But David, the arrows, the evaluation, they make these things look simple, but there could be a 6-move variation that is not easy to spot, and knight f2 is wrong. The first step is the incorrect one.
That's right. And we've seen the accuracies in Firouzja's games in the past. It's never the highest because this is the type of position he gets on a regular basis. It's just pure chaos. It's impossible to calculate 6 moves ahead in every variation, but that's what the players might well have to do as Levon finds another only move. King to e2, hiding in plain sight here, Robert. The white king looks in so much danger, but it's living and, for now, still a piece up.
Well, I mean, king e2, just what a decision there. Just trying to connect the rooks, maybe bring that a1 rook over to f1 if another defender for the king is necessary. And it's getting closer and closer to mating net situations, but for now, that white king, it can escape. So if black state plays f4, I was actually expecting that. King d2. I didn't even see the blue arrow yet, but king d2, king c3. You run for the hills, and I do think that you get away here if you're Levon Aronian. So he picked up the gauntlet. He's the one who decided to play an aggressive game from the start. And David, king d2 now, will he find that move? I think Levon, of course, has it within himself to find it, but it's not that simple to walk into certain checks.
Yeah, that is difficult to say the least. I think difficult's an understatement here, Robert. Maybe he'll find it by process of elimination. He doesn't have that many other tempting moves. The white rook in the corner, it's pretty much trapped. The white knight is pinned. The white bishop's stuck. So it's either a queen move or a king move, pretty much. I don't think the white rook on a1 can really do anything too productive either. So it's just the fact that that king's done so much work, so much exercise already this game, Robert. It's moved forward to e2 a couple of times. It's moved back to e1. I mean, king d2. If he plays it, he deserves a star. He deserves an exclamation mark or two for that one. And I think Firouzja, that will be a nasty shock for him, but no guarantees. I'm not sure. The longer it goes, I think the more likely he's to find it. But No, it's d4 instead. He doesn't find the best move, and suddenly Firouzja's winning.
Wow, he wants to escape to d3 with his king. Okay, look at that move. That's saying the only move that will give Firouzja the winning advantage is rook to d8. He starts the f3 check. The king, it goes up to d3, which maybe was the wrong decision, but that was the plan. But David, I mean, rook d8, pawn d5, doesn't this game kind of continue from here, where I don't see an immediate checkmate against that white king, even though it's out in the open?
Yeah, I don't see it either. Oh, Firouzja sees a checkmate. He wanted to land the queen on d2. That would have caught the white king, but the white king continues to run. And okay, you need to bring more forces in. Ammunition is the key word here. The rook sliding across to c6, maybe b6 to cut the king's escape. Robert, this is genius from Firouzja with only 40 seconds on the clock.
Such an amazing find by him, because if d5, then comes queen d2 check, rook b6 to follow, and this is what happens when you have clumsy pieces. The knight on f2, the bishop on g1, the rook on h1, they are not helping in the defense of the white king. So I don't even see how you solve it. Maybe knight d3, but that still looks shaky after rook c6.
Oh, knight d3, yeah, rook c6. That would be a nasty pin. I'm not even sure. I want to jump the knight forward there. It looks like checkmate in all these variations. Levon, maybe it was just that one move. Instead of running with the king immediately, where the black queen could suddenly step back, he could have had a similar position with a pawn back on d3 and extra full tempo with which to defend. But I think I would play that move, Robert. I think you might have to jump the knight forward to try and act as a shield. But he's living a charmed life now. He's not even out that much material, and I've got to say, it looks like Firouzja, oh, a look over on the camera there from him. He's looking confident. He's looking locked in, focused.
He's looking like that bull right behind him in the frame there. He is ready to pounce. And for Levon, he shook his head. He knows that things are going wrong for him. He was the one who decided to be super active and fight from move 2, d3 there to play out 4. But now his king, unfortunately for him, it's run right into the line of fire, and he's going for this line. The one thing, David, look at Alireza's clock, 40 seconds. That's going to keep Levon in this game.
That's true. If Levon Aronian survives these next few moves, he still has an extra knight. Firouzja needs to deliver checkmate or win material back in the process. And oh, Robert, he only needs a draw. He can keep checking with the rook.
Oh, that's really tragic for Levon, that even if he tries to survive, he may have to sacrifice a bunch of material. So smart play by Firouzja. Knight b4, David, that looks like the way to play on here, but a5 is so obvious that it might just be losing. And okay, oh, he tries this way.
Levon gives up his queen out of desperation. A draw would have ended this match in Firouzja's favor. But unfortunately, the material count, it's a queen for rook and knight. Not just that, but look at the white king on the edge of the board. Robert, this one, I think the result's almost guaranteed as long as we don't see any kind of self-destruct on the clock here from Firouzja. He can win a pawn, I was going to say, on e4. He steps forward with his f-pawn instead. This one is almost over. Levon living on his last legs right now.
And f2 was a nice move. Instead of just being defensive, just say, got opponents about to promote. Bishop h2, queen takes e4. As you noted, the d4 pawn will fall next. So I think Alireza has everything under control, and you can see it on Levon's face. He's shaking his head. He knows that this has not been his match.
Yeah, so close. So inspired. He even had an objective advantage just a few moves ago. But yeah, when you're running away with the king, when you're going for the king walk, the king hunt, of course, the price of an error is so much higher. And that's just one check. Black king easily waltzes out of it and attacks the knight. This one, oof, I think you can take a piece at will. Take the knight, take the bishop. You can choose your own adventure right now, and it's over. The last few moments of this game, despite Alireza's clock situation, Robert, he's been fantastic today.
He's found all of the key resources when he needed to, and he is now up way too much material. Resignation time. That means Alireza Firouzja wins. He moves on to the grand finals, and that means we will see a rematch of Firouzja and Carlsen. Alireza, what a performance by him against what seemed like a very informed Levon Aronian.
Yeah, Levon Aronian, we can't fault him today. He gave it his all. He got past Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in great fashion, but ultimately this was one hurdle too far. I think he'll regret that first game more than anything, going passive and getting ground down. Firouzja showing off his endgame skills in the first game, showing off his tactical vision in the middle game in the second encounter, and ultimately a deserved winner. And I think we're all going to be excited about seeing that clash, the rematch against Magnus Carlsen.
And that bull in the background, it might be laughing now. I know the laughing cow, it's got a little cheesy joke in there, but as we see, Alireza Firouzja wins 2-0. He's in gold, but will he win gold? He will have to beat Magnus Carlsen twice tomorrow, David, but in the here and now, in the present of today, Alireza Firouzja, I mean, the way he played in the endgame in the first one, then to get all tactical against Levon, after Levon's surprise in the opening, you could tell this is a hungry Firouzja who is ready to take on anybody put in front of him.
That's right. He was hungry for victory there and was rewarded. And that brings us to our move of the day. Make your move of the day with Rubik's. And it was this moment. It wasn't a check. It wasn't a capture. It was instead a threat that solved things in Firouzja's favor right now. Black had been chasing the White King around all game. The White King stuck in the center on a bit of a journey, but it was caught in no man's land. This was the move of the day. Queen back to G5. Silent but deadly. A huge threat of Queen coming into D2 with a checkmate. The White King caught in the center, and it was followed up brilliantly as well. The White King continued to run. This time it was Rook to F6 that solved this puzzle for Firouzja. The White King ultimately could not hide from the checks from the front. A nasty pin threatened here. Queen to D2 still in the air, and try as he might, Aronian could not survive. He tried to use his knight to block, but a check followed by another check was enough for Firouzja. A draw would have got him through. Ultimately, he went on to win this game, and a deserved winner, that is for sure.
Definitely a deserved win for Alireza Firouzja. And we just want to shout out our partner, Rubik's, because, hey, the Rubik's Cube celebrating 50 years with the Make Your Move campaign. In the past 50 years, 1 in 7 people across the entire world have attempted solving the puzzle. Like chess, the art of a Rubik's Cube is its complexity and the eternal human values of curiosity, perseverance, and creativity. With over 43 quintillion permutations and only one solution, what's your next move? Visit go.chess.com/Rubik's50 or use the command Rubik's in chat to explore. And while we roll out, thanking our partner in Rubik's, we are going to bring on Alireza Firouzja for an interview. So get your questions in chat. We may ask Firouzja, the winner of today's action, anything that you may have in your mind. So please do write them in chat now, because after this break, we will have Firouzja, who goes on to the grand final against Magnus Carlsen. He was a man possessed. He was able to beat in form, Aronian. But right now, it's break time and then an interview with Firouzja.
Levon Aronian has been one of the world's strongest players for almost 2 decades. The 41-year-old has won numerous major tournaments, achieved the 4th highest rating in history, and consistently been ranked among the world's top 5 players. Thanks to his imaginative and aggressive play, in addition to his witty personality and good sense of humor, Aronian has also become a fan favorite across the chess world. However, in the Champions Chess Tour, he has yet to fully showcase his immense capabilities, sometimes coming up short against the younger generation of elite players. This time, Aronian faces the daunting task of competing against a new wave of prodigious talents, many of whom are less than half his age. The question remains, can his wealth of experience and profound understanding of the game help him prevail over the dynamic and innovative strategies of his younger rivals?
Hi, I'm Badana and I'm here with Judith Polka, and I picked a game that I really liked of hers to show today.
And this game was special for several reasons, but let's move on with some of the next moves. And then I tell you more and you ask your questions. I took back. It's a pawn sacrifice for initiative. I was always very happy to give up material in order to look for activity. E5 I played, right? Knight e7.
Bishop g5.
Bishop g5. Yeah, I like this move generally because I pinned the queen. And now castle. So I do like to sacrifice pawns. At the same time, if I don't have to give up material, I might as well take it back, yeah? I took this back, queen takes. knight c6. Why is this possible for black?
So we're attacking the queen, and if they take on c6, then we can take on g5.
And when you saw this game of mine, what did you think around this position?
I thought white was still better because like it's just more active and developed, I felt. And also like we might be play bishop f6 at some point.
Oh, that can be strong, yeah?
Yeah.
So I like my move. This was a very strong move, moving away my queen and b6.
He's not gonna find it. He's got 1 second. 1 second. Oh, mate on h6. Rook h6 mate. He's winning. I can't believe it.
Oh my goodness.
Take. Oh,
right.
Oh. He drops his rook.
Flagging.
D3. Oh, Bach throws.
Antipov wins this game in the craziest manner.
We are delighted to be back with Alireza Firouzja, who took down Levon Aronian 2-0 in their match as Alireza makes his way to the grand final against Magnus Carlsen tomorrow. Alireza, I have to ask you, how would you describe that match in your own words? Because it seemed like Levon surprised you out of the openings.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite stupid by me to not check the win over because he played against me in St. Louis Rapid, so I completely forgot. I just checked the knight f6. So yeah, then he easily managed to equalize. I blundered knight c3 check, and yeah, it was not a good game. But after, yeah, in endgame, it's a bit tricky for black, but it should not be a big deal. So I was quite lucky to win that game.
Well, you say quite lucky, and I guess a lot of people are wondering, how do top GMs like yourself win games that look like they should be a draw? Of course, sometimes your opponent makes a mistake, but it did feel like you were putting him in uncomfortable positions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit uncomfortable, the position, because you psychologically you can never win, and you have to only suffer. So that is not the greatest thing to have in mind always. So that puts a bit pressure on the opponent, and then you have to make few good moves to put a lot of pressure, and finding those few moves is pretty important, and after you have to use your luck to win games.
Well, sometimes luck does go your way, but you also have a ton of skill. So if I switch to game 2 for a moment, Alireza, in that game, it looked like Levon was throwing everything at you. He went G3, he had a material imbalance. How did you keep your nerves, and what was your thought process like when you did, in fact, get those 2 pawns for the minor piece?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's moved 2. I got outplayed already. D3, knight f6 is not a great move, I think. It's the only trick, and I fall for it. So at least something to learn. And yeah, but after, he's of course better, and so I had to kind of go for these complications, I think. And yeah, I felt like it's very tricky for me. It's very dangerous, but I just trusted my intuition there and just went for it. But I think with few good moves, he had a very good position.
And you said, he caught you off guard on the second move with his D3 move. It doesn't seem very threatening, but what went through your mind after he played that? Did you think that he's just trying to get a random position, or did you think that he might be preparing something and has some kind of idea up his sleeve?
No, I honestly just thought he wants to play some kind of peak position, like knight f3, g3 after, but yeah, I think it's very smart to go for this trap. I mean, knight f6, f4 is already very comfortable for white, so... yeah, I think if I just go knight c6, probably he wants to go for knight f3, g3, or something like this to get a game. So, yeah, it was a clever choice by him because you have to get a game in most situations.
Yeah, just getting any old position instead of something that you may know very well. But Alireza, a question I have for you that's not about chess for the moment is, I really like the bull behind you. So, I mean, what's the story behind that framed bull up there?
I don't know. I'm staying at Airbnb, so I'm staying at Airbnb, so it's kind of random, the pictures. So I'm not. It's not. I'm not controlling that. It's just some random pictures there.
Okay, well then I won't ask too many questions about it, like where you get it, because I kind of want one for my wall. But I will ask you a question from the chat from Young Sklunch. Sorry if I mispronounced your username. What's your pregame routine before facing Magnus tomorrow?
What is my routine?
Yeah, before you face Magnus.
I mean, I have to prepare a lot of opening because it's pretty good in opening, has a lot of experience. But yeah, other than that, I should keep a lot of energy because our games takes a lot of energy, and at the end, I think whoever is more fresh in the game 4 or last games is the winner probably. So I think most important is to rest and have fresh head before the game.
And Alireza, you've played Magnus many times, and last year you did. Earlier this year, excuse me, you were able to beat him twice in a day in 2 separate matches. You'll need to do that tomorrow. But what have you learned from playing Magnus this much? Like, has your experience, does it sort of teach you certain things and how to approach the match?
Yeah, I think he's very clever against each opponent, how to play, how to... he has a lot of experience to put opponents in uncomfortable situations. So he's pretty clever in that. But of course, a lot of people already know Magnus in which positions he's uncomfortable, but it's pretty hard to get him in those situations. So mostly I have to try to play my game and try to make the best moves, and then if I make the best moves, it should go well.
Well, yesterday was a nail biter. It was a very close match, and tomorrow it's a new day. So, of course, we wish you good luck. And one final question I have before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening and get ready for tomorrow is, you have already qualified for the finals. They're going to be in Oslo in December. Last year, you had the experience in person. Are you looking forward to playing in front of a live audience again and playing against some of the best players in the world in person?
Yeah, of course. It was a lot of fun last year in Toronto. Now it's even a stronger field, and everybody is very prepared because we played all year long a lot of rapid tournaments. So I think it will be very exciting. And I'm happy that I will not travel so long, at least this time.
Yeah, I think Magnus has a little bit of a shorter travel than you do, but yes, your travel is short to get there. Alireza, thanks so much for doing this interview. We will let you go because we know it's getting late by you, and you've got a lot of stuff to do. But congratulations again on a very impressive win.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Alireza Firouzja. Such a monster in these time controls. He takes down Levon Aronian 2-0, setting up a rematch that, David, the chat anticipated. 73% of them thought Alireza would make it through, but now he has to beat Magnus Carlsen and not just do it once. He has got to do it twice.
That's right, Robert. He's been there before, though. He has had success against Magnus in the Champions Chess Tour, so he should be taking heart. He has to forget, however, the experience of the Speed Chess Championship, where it was pretty one-sided in Magnus's favor. And Robert, I was enjoying your interview. I was loving every moment. But in the meantime, I was preparing something a bit special for you, a bit of a surprise. Levon Aronian was on fire this tournament, but he ran into someone even hotter. Check out these stats. Those are some high accuracy rates.
Wow, and Levon, you see the fourth bullet point. He was at his highest accuracy against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. It was a one-sided matchup, but this is what Firouzja does, right, David? He takes you into that deep, dark forest a la Mikhail Tal, and he says, I'm getting out of it, and good luck to you. You better have a compass handy.
Yeah, depending on which way you look at it, he either drags everyone down with him or he just drags them into that forest, and he always seems to be the one emerging, Firouzja. So commiserations to Levon. On the bright side, we will see him in Oslo in those finals in December, which is going to be fantastic. Nice to hear Firouzja, looking forward to that as well. But today, Firouzja was the stronger player, and yeah, just sparkling games, especially when he gets a chance to attack, and he'll hope he can do the same against Magnus tomorrow. What are you looking forward to most from that match, Robert?
I just can't wait to see another rematch between those two, because if yesterday was any indication, we are in for a very close match. And David, we saw Firouzja, he played very well. He had an even game. I mean, in his own words, he was saying, like, it seemed like nothing was there. He missed that knight c3 check idea, but still, he was able to win a technical endgame that looked every bit equal. So what do you think yourself heading into tomorrow? Magnus gets the rest day, but Firouzja, he was in good form.
Yeah, he was in great form. I mean, as a pure chess fan, I just can't wait. This sets everything up perfectly. Their last match, Magnus and Firouzja yesterday, it was chaotic, it was fun, it was a really wild ride, and I'm hoping for more of the same. So I think this was the perfect setup. Of course, sad to see Levon or Aronian go, but this is the clash we all wanted, the fans wanted, the chat wanted, and it's going to be happening here tomorrow.
Yeah, and tomorrow we're going to be treated to all three grand finals in Division 1, 2, and 3. So if you're a fan of, say, Fabiano Caruana, he will be taking part in the Division 3 grand final. And tomorrow, it does end the Julius Baer Generation Cup, but that doesn't mean that the chess stops. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank you, David, and our production team that's working so hard. But I also want everybody to know that if you are looking forward to some weekend college sports, it's not just about college football season. Tune in to the Collegiate Chess League this Saturday. This season's action of 4 versus 4 team chess features the likes of Nico Chekgaisi, Mikhail Antipov, Benjamin Bach, and Jules Gambit are calling the action on Chess.com streams. So use the command CCL in chat or visit go.chess.com/CCL24 for everything you need to know. Well, David, there's much more chess ahead. Even when the Julius Baer Generation Cup comes to a close, we will have CCL, but this show, it has to come to a close. I'm glad that tomorrow we will cover the final together, the grand final in all 3 of these divisions. We already know the 8 players who will make their way to Oslo, Norway from December 17th to 21st. I want to know, you in chat, will you be there as well? But tomorrow we have an answer to at least 3 important questions. Who will win the Julius Baer Generation Cup? Will it be Magnus Carlsen? Will it be Alireza Firouzja in the other divisions? Or who will get that claim to fame, to shine in the spotlight of this broadcast? That's to be determined. But for now, everybody, enjoy the rest of your evening or afternoon, depending on where you are. If it's nighttime, go to bed already. But when you wake up tomorrow, there is more chess to watch. So we hope to see you then. This is the Champion Chess Tour, the Julius Baer Generation Cup. I'm Robert Hess. Alongside me for this great ride has been David Howell. See you tomorrow, everybody. Have some fun.